Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Economy, Infrastructure, Communities Oversight and Scrutiny Committee. Today is the 11th of February 2026 and the time is 2 o'clock. And now invite Jacob for any apologies, please.
Good afternoon, committee. Apologies received from Councillor Bagley and Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Jacob. Are there any declarations of interest? I would now like to move on to item 3, the minutes of the 29th of January 2026. Can I resolve that the minutes are a true and accurate representation? Thank you. I have a motion forwarded. Anyone to second? Thank you. Thank you for that, Jacob. I would now like to welcome Balfour Beatty to make a presentation on works to begin in Lichfield. I now welcome Wendy, Joel and Alan to present. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name's Wendy McSeveny. I work for Balfour Beatty VINCI. I'm based in the Lichfield area and we're delivering a presentation today on the upcoming A38 closures from Swinfen Interchange to Hilliers Cross.
Hi, my name's Joel Massey. I work for HS2. We were going to play a video that gave you an update of the progress of work that is taking place across the whole of the line of route, but I think we're having some technical difficulties, so what we can do is we can send that out afterwards with a link to the video, and that will give you an idea of the size and scale and complexity of the work that we're already undertaking. Can you do the next slide for me, please? I'll quickly run through these. Just a very quick update around the reset. So we're HS2 are resetting the programme so we can deliver it as cost effectively and efficiently as possible. Our CEO, Mark Wild, is leading this. We should hopefully have an update within the coming weeks. That's all we know for now in terms of exact dates. We don't have any, but that will provide a new cost and a new schedule for HS2. In the meantime, what we are doing is primarily focusing our efforts and resources on delivering the line from Birmingham to Old Oak Common in West London, and because of that, I think if you can do the next slide for me, please, Wendy. So as part of that, we've continued with the deferral of work in this section for a further 4 years, but nonetheless we are continuing to carry out essential construction work within this area, and that's what we're here to talk to you today about. So the A38 is classified as part of that essential construction work that we'd like to complete. I'll hand over to our colleagues, Balfour Beatty VINCI, who are the contractors delivering on behalf of HS2 this work. And we can talk you through some of the detail around what it is that we're doing and what's involved.
Thanks, Joel. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting us today. My name's Alan Fattar, and like Wendy, I'm from Balfour Beatty VINCI and part of the stakeholder engagement team. Just before we go into the kind of main topic of discussion or information sharing on the A38, on the screen here is just a bit of a snapshot and an overview of the area that Joel referred to that's kind of been subjected to that kind of deferral. So Mainline North, as we refer to it as within the project, is a circa 30-kilometre stretch of route from North Warwickshire in Coedworth up to the kind of Handsacre area up into Staffordshire. So at full capacity and in full flow, that involves the construction of 116 assets, an indicative value there of £1.9 billion pounds worth of major civils to undertake. But as Joel said, as part of the reset and to prioritise the kind of minimum viable railway, and that's Birmingham to Old Oak Common in West London, a vast majority or a vast swathe of this part of the line has been obviously deferred. However, amongst that, there are still some critical works that are taking place, and they're mainly focused around where there's that critical interaction on the kind of major arterial routes and on the road network. So with that being said, I'll hand over to my colleague Wendy, who will provide an overview of one of those key pieces of work that is ongoing, and that's the A38 and the upcoming works there.
Apologies, my construction manager was unfortunately can't make it today, so I can give you kind of just like a touch on basic update on the A38. If there is any questions or anyone would actually like to come along to Capper's Lane, Zach would be more than happy to have you in person and kind of give you more of a kind of an in-depth of the reason why it's going to take the 11 days and kind of anything else that you would like to ask. So I'm very going to be light touch on if that's okay. So this is a snapshot of the current A38 as it stands at the moment. So it's known locally as the Big Bend. So a key piece of work what we are doing is going to be taking out that Big Bend, and we're going to be putting the road back to the original realignment. So what basically had to happen is we've had to do this in phases. Of course, if we couldn't just close the A38 for 2, 3, 4 years, it would be major disruption. We weren't able to do that. So what we've had to do is kind of do it in phases. So once the 11-day closures have basically, it's back on the original alignment, we're going to be completing the final phase of what's known as the Street Hay Overbridge, even though it is actually going under the A38. It originally was going to be an overbridge, but they decided to put it underneath the A38. So that's the big key piece of work that we're doing. And you'll also notice, if you've been in the Litchfield area, the little section at the bottom there, like the on-slip, that's at Street Hay. That is on a temporary alignment, so that needs to come out. And we need to then, of course, build the permanent, to put it back onto like a permanent on-slip. So at the minute, we are looking at round about Easter. We're still waiting for the kind of a final dates. And of course, I'm happy to cascade it. I can pass it over to Jacob to cascade out. But we are planning Easter time for these closures, more so that it is the Easter holidays, and traffic typically is lighter, should we say, when the schools are off. So we're trying to strategically plan it in a way where it is going to be disruptive work, there is no getting away from that, but try and kind of minimise it as and where feasibly possible. Try and go to the next one. There we go. Again, it's just a kind of a brief overview of, I said if Zach was here, he would have kind of talked to you in more detail kind of about what we're going to be doing. But in essence, there is something like 258 hours worth of work that we have to be doing. If we didn't put the 11-day full closures on both carriageways, we would be looking at potentially up to 6 months consecutive weekend closures. Which would of course be more disruptive. So it's kind of when I've been out and about doing some engagement events, which I'll touch on in a bit, but it's kind of like the short-term pain, long-term gain. So yes, we will close the A38 in both directions for 11 days, but obviously once it reopens, it will be back on the original alignment. There we go. So traffic management. While the closures are in place, we have going to, of course, have to have a diversion route in place. So it's basically going to be taking you, if you're coming from, for instance, the M6 toll, you're going to be taken up to Swinford Interchange, and that's kind of so the orange section is where the road is going to be closed from. And of course, the blue dotted line is kind of where it's going to be kind of taking you around to take you back onto the A38. So this will be for the 11-day closure. Southbound is exactly the same, but just in the opposite direction. So you'll come off at Hilliard's Cross, which is Fradley Business Park, and it'll bring you back round that same diversion route that the northbound does. So of course, once the A38 reopens, the main carriageways, the northbound on-slip that I was referring to earlier will remain closed. We of course have to take out that temporary diversion and build the permanent on-slip to make it back into a proper on-slip onto the A38. So that will be, once the A38 is back open, that will be what the local diversion route will look like. And then do have, of course, what we are looking to try and do is try and keep as many HGVs coming down the A38 that does not need to be in the Litchfield area. So we do have a strategic diversion route, which will be taking them kind of away from Litchfield, that is the hope, and bring them down the A42, M42, and then of course whatever direction they're going. So that is what we call the strategic diversion route. So this is just like a snapshot of kind of what we've done engagement-wise. So of course these closures have only really been agreed and spoken about since September. So of course the local people and out with Litchfield as well were not aware that these closures were going to be happening. So we've done a substantial amount of engagement already. Of course we do have a lot more engagement events coming up. I'm at Imperial Park tomorrow, just off at Eastern Avenue, working collaboratively with National Highways. They've provided us with their engagement van. So we can get into places like car parks that wouldn't be, so I don't need to, we'll have got drop-ins for halls and things like that, but this is actually getting us into high footfall areas to be trying to cascade this messaging out. Appreciate maybe not everyone might see the update, but yeah, it's it's an extra opportunity to get ourselves out there and try and get as many people aware and made aware of these closures as feasibly possible. So the next one we've got is that we are going to be in the Guildhall, which is not in Stafford, it's the one in Litchfield. We're going to be doing a drop in there. So, and of course, as I said, we've also got the National Highways van. We've also done a webinar, and we also, I'm running a business forum for all the businesses that are impacted as well. So my next one's at 4 o'clock today. So we've got businesses on there from Fradley, Britannia Business Park, and the local businesses as well that join that webinar, or that business forum, sorry. And they get an opportunity to ask questions and receive updates as and when we've got them. So that is a QR code for all the engagement events. So if anybody wants to come along, we've got a dedicated page on the HS2 website. So that is a QR code for that. And we also have a specific A38 dedicated landing page as well. So everything is in one place. It's like a one-stop shop for information. It gives you animated diversion routes, gives you all, basically once, as and when confirmed the dates will be, they will also be on that dedicated landing page. And then just to touch on briefly, we're doing a lot of community investment in and around the Litchfield area. So we've done quite a few projects. We've got my engagement advisor, she leads on this. So what we do is we try and support her in. So we appreciate that we are causing a major impact on the Litchfield community, but we do obviously try and help out. So we work closely with St Giles Hospice in Whittington. We've worked the Pathway Project in Litchfield, the British Heart Foundation. They're just some of the few that we work with, as well as going into schools. Both myself and Arabella are STEM ambassadors, so we go in and deliver STEM sessions as well. So that's just a couple of the things that we've done. Easter egg donations, Advent calendar donations, that type of thing. We've been at Two Rivers School, which is a SEND school, and we've been there twice. And delivered 2 different separate STEM sessions as well. And of course we've been at Willows Primary. We've done 4 days there. And that was Midland Nature Reserve, so it's not that we've got allotments, we've got lots of different projects that we do kind of a support on as to try and give something back to the community. So it's not just about giving you the bad news. We do try and help out the local area to try and give you something back. And of course that's just what we do for we do have a dedicated skills education and employment team. So they do go mock interviews, do careers days, career carousels. We've got STEM kits with them as well that we tap into. So yeah, there's lots of different things going on out with of just the construction itself. And then that's just some information on where you can find the information, or if you would like to find out more. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Before I move open to questions from the members, first of all, I have 2 points that wanted to be raised by Councillor Peter Mason, our Cabinet Member for Highways. First, on Wood Lane, we need BBV to work to a current defects list with Staffordshire County Council Highways, not one created internally, We also expect robust, long-lasting repairs suitable for the diversion traffic, not temporary fixes. Second, we urgently need the traffic study that sets out the expected traffic movements and any temporary traffic management required on nearby roads, junctions. We are 6 weeks away and still lack a clear picture of the likely impact on national highways, which will not formally agree the closure until the study is provided. But I assume we're going to work with Peter more closely on that rather than you giving an answer to that there, but he wanted that on the minutes and on the record. I'm now open to questions from the members. No? Okay.
Yeah,
Councillor Pendleton.
thank you very much, Andrew Miners.
Unfortunately, Andrew, I gave you some misinformation earlier. As a cabinet member, you're not allowed to ask questions. I'm very sorry.
Send it to me now.
Councillor Pendleton.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, I'd just like to ask one question. How are concerns captured and resolved in the engagement plan? And will there be a business impact hotline during the closure?
Yeah, so the complaints will come into, generally speaking, they'll come into the HS2 help desk. They do have a 24/7 help desk. But within the 11-day closure itself, we're bypassing that normal kind of a channel of going into the help desk and then waiting for, you know, we've got like a 48-hour turnaround. That within that closure itself will be getting bypassed, so they will be coming to myself directly. So I'm going to be working through the 11-day closure. They'll come directly to myself for through the day. If it's going to be an evening one, we do have an emergency contact number. So the HS2 help desk will be bypassing the normal standard process that they follow, and it will be coming directly between myself and the emergency number if I'm not working. I'd love to be able to say I could work 24/7, but yeah. So.
Okay, just a small question for myself. Like, how long are the delays to the route that people are going to be having to take? And then how much of an impact of all of the traffic that used to go down the A38 being funneled down these two different diversion routes, how much of an impact on the traffic is that going to have?
So we are currently just waiting on our traffic modelling coming back in. I do believe that it's been, hopefully by the end of this week, we should have a better idea of kind of what it would look like. And just of course on Councillor Mason's points as well, those are being worked on in the background. Obviously I'm in the engagement team, but our traffic management team is working to try and get the traffic modelling up to date. We'll work with Staffordshire County Council and National Highways, and we'll take a plan from there, as much as I can tell you at the minute. But of course, when we do have any further information, we can certainly get that cascaded out.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It isn't my area, so I'm not 100% sure, but I see you mentioned the M6 toll road. Will we be encouraging more people to use that? And if so, will that be putting an expense on some of the businesses? That's what I'm trying to... Some businesses use this toll road and some don't they?
Yeah.
So that was one question.
We won't be encouraging them to use the toll road, no. What we are doing is we're putting signage, so the VMSs that you see on the motorway, they're going as far down as Dover. Yeah. They're going to be on the M1, the M25, the M6. They're going to be all on all the key motorways, advising them of these closures, and of course trying to avoid them where possible. We're also doing some additional work in the background, because obviously local communities, Lichfield, certain parts of it's quite rural, so to prevent them what they've known as rat running, we are doing some additional measures. So I'm working really closely with Staffordshire County Council and with National Highways to come up with what we call a communication toolkit. We are also got the Road Haulage Association. We have a meeting with them next week, so there'll be a comms toolkit provided to those as well to encourage the HGVs that do not need to use that specific stretch of road to just avoid it. and go the strategic diversion route that was there. So we're not encouraging them to go the M6 toll, no, but we are encouraging them to just try and avoid that area where feasibly possible.
I was happy if you was encouraging them. I was just wondering if there was some financial help you could give them if they have to use it more than they would have to use it. That's what I was getting to. But I think, well done, it's got to be done, and it looks like you've covered most bases. Thank you very much.
Councillor James.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, what arrangements have been agreed with police and emergency services to maintain emergency access throughout the 11-day closure, please? Thank you.
Yep. So I had the fire service out last week driving the diversion route. We're also doing a scenario planning next month, early next month, with all the emergency services. That is going to be held at Cappers Lane. So obviously a plan, scenario planning, certain things that may happen within the closure period, what may that happen. So the emergency services have known about this way before Christmas, so it's been on their radar, and I said they are invited next month. They're coming into site next month to go through a scenario planning.
Any further questions? If not, I would like to move the motion that we refer Balfour Beatty to work with our cabinet members for highways and connectivity. And once you have any further information, you bring it back to this committee. And I would also welcome the site visit to Cappers Lane to get that arranged as quickly as possible for this committee. Does anyone want to move that motion forward? Yeah. Yeah. And a seconder? Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we will see you when you have more information for us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We will just give a bit of time to have a switch around now, but we are moving on to item number 5. Which is the Environmental Action Plan, and I invite our Cabinet Member for Connectivity, Andrew Miners, and the officers to get in position and give your presentation, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for coming, attending here. I'm going to give a little bit of a brief outline here of what we're aiming for here, some of the key priorities and some of the action points that we're having, probably about a 5-minute talk, and then we've got a small presentation for you with some slides to show you the Environmental Action Plan. A little bit on the background here. It's the environment, obviously, we think Staffordshire is beautiful, and it is central to our health, well-being, prosperity for residents, visitors and businesses. Yeah, that's key to what we want to have for in Staffordshire. There is pressures. Obviously, this week has been heavy rain across Staffordshire. I believe there's a multitude of small call-out emergencies of flooding around Staffordshire. So the weather is affecting our roads, and we have to work through that. We have to look at the rising energy costs. We have to look at our infrastructure, our bridges, our roads, our potholes, and how we're going to fix those, as well as looking at the natural habitat that we live in. There is some overlap on this portfolio of some of the other portfolios that we have looking after Staffordshire environments. So we want to create opportunities for people in Staffordshire for investment and drive innovation and help the local economy and support long-term resilience. So we've narrowed it down to sort of 8 key focus points that we're going to work through. And in those focus points, there are over 91 actions. About 43 of these are new actions. Some of them are ongoing. It's what every council in the country is doing already for looking after the environment. So we want to reduce Staffordshire County Council's overall environmental impact. There'll be some short slides to discuss this. We want to make sure that the services and communities can adapt to changing weather patterns. We want to support economic growth. We want to support the local nature recovery. And critically, importantly, we want to look at waste minimisation. We also want to support affordable, reliable energy and looking at the costs of the energy. We want to assist the delivery of multimodal transport system in line with economic growth. And we want to work with partners to deliver innovative actions across growth, transport, energy, buildings, waste, environmental adaptation. And as we said, there are some links with the Environmental Action Plan. It's not delivered in isolation. It complements and aligns with other council environment-related strategies. It includes flood risk management and a budget for the flood risk management. There's a really nice, useful, fair approach to community flood risk that we've been working with here of engagement. We're taking this to give to our parish councils, and so they can be very aware of who to call and what to call, and what we're doing with flood risks. We also want to make sure there is an overlap there with the local nature recovery strategy, the local transport plan, and ensure a coordinated approach for resilience in growth. And lastly, but not least, we really want to look, because it's the environment, we want to pull in and have a look at environmental crime. At the moment in the UK, there's perhaps about £1 billion of an epidemic, should we say, of waste crime. Recently, I was up in Chemical Lane looking at a flood resilience scheme that the Staffordshire County Council is working with Network Rail and Severn Trent up there. It's been flooded for 18 years. The local recycling businesses are very frustrated that their lane is becoming flooded. But if you look around Chemical Lane, it really stands up to its name. It really is a challenge of waste that's been dumped there for years and years. If you look recently on the news, linking with the Environment Agency, it's a disaster. In the news, people might have seen recently about fly tipping in Oxfordshire. It's gone on over months, right under people's nose. It's costing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds to fix and resolve the issue. So we need to work more closely with the Environment Agency. You have to just look at 27 tonnes of waste, and the Environment Agency is working through a trial, and it's not coming to trial until March 2027. We want to look at the fly tip waste. I think this time of year is a very good way to look at our hedges, our environment. There isn't any leaves on the trees yet, and you can clearly see the amount of litter that's going along the sides of our roads. And we do have money allocated to a lot of other things with remedial actions for flooding. And so I'll pause there and pass over to my colleague and officers who have been working together to get this budget together, to keep this budget, and put a lot of new action points in here that we work together, and then we'll be taking any questions. So I'll switch the mic off now and pass over to James.
Thank you, Councillor Miners, and good afternoon, ladies and gents. Hopefully I've got a presentation. It's like my remote at home, this, I'll just press harder. There we are. Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. Okay, so hopefully within your packs you've managed to just have a quick flick over the print, or not print out, I printed it out, but the Environmental Action Plan. Hopefully it's easy read. I've read through it a number of times and it seems to flow quite well. We brought to Scrutiny tail end of last year the new environmental strategy, which then subsequently went through Cabinet in December 25, which sets the foundation for then this action plan, which delivers and supports those 8 priorities. It's different from what's gone before, and there's still a consideration on the impacts of weather. Certainly it's been wet over the past few weeks, but we should not also forget that we can have summers and heat, and that has different impacts. So we are really looking at business resilience within the council, but also supporting our communities. There's a key focus here around the economy as well, working closely with businesses and communities, and I'll talk a little bit later as we go through. So I'll take you hopefully a sort of low-level pass over the top, and then welcome questions afterwards. This first slide I'll sort of go through bullet point by bullet point, but that won't be the ethos for the rest of the presentation. I just wanted to land these quite well with you. So the Environmental Action Plan targets environmental risk while improving operational efficiency, really looking at our own operations and making them as efficient as possible, but delivering those day-to-day services. Creates opportunities for employment, skills development, investment, and to build a stronger, more resilient green economy. I'll touch on that a little bit later. And with local government reorganisation sort of coming over the hill in the next few years, there is a real short-term focus here, what we can get over the line in the first couple of years to really help our communities and businesses without losing sight of that medium and long-term considerations that we need to build in as well. And the actions are coordinated across all directorates. It's not just the INS, it's throughout the whole council, and it's a council-wide approach we're pulling together through this plan. Sorry, I don't know what I'm pointing at. There you go. So these are the 8 key priorities. I'm not going to go through one by one, and hopefully they're fairly self-explanatory. I will say behind those priorities, it's a big door as soon as you open it. They are massive subjects. And if I was just to expose one just a little bit further, it would be priority 6, supporting access to affordable and reliable energy. A little fact for you, over the next 20, 25 years, we're going to use roughly twice the amount of electricity that we do today, which is substantial. We're dealing with a national grid that's designed decades ago and isn't fit for purpose as we stand today, and probably not into the future. We have been working with the National Energy Systems Operator, NESO, over the past 6 months, really looking at what the demand looks like in the future. We're going to heat our homes more, we're going to use electricity more within transport, and I'm sure we're going to plug more devices into the electricity grid going forwards. So it's really about understanding what that opportunity and what opportunities lay behind that. With infrastructure, there's obviously opportunities for the economy as well, for jobs, and usually within these sectors they're higher paid jobs. So looking to the future prosperity of Staffordshire as well. I'm just going to touch slightly on each one of the priorities as well. I haven't gone through every single action, but welcome to take questions on the various actions towards the end. So I've just taken a few examples. I'm just going to go through the ones in bold, I think. First priority is reduce Staffordshire County Council's overall impact. For years now, we've been looking at bringing our buildings to be more energy efficient. The rating's a lot better. But we also need to consider, are our corporate assets, properties and maintained schools fit for the future? In the short term, we're going to be looking at expansion of solar PV, that's photovoltaics, electricity generation, on rooftops within our corporate assets. So there's going to be a budget saving basically going forward, generate our own electricity, and we need to spend less or import less electricity going forward. Priority 2 is about ensuring services and communities can adapt to impactful weather. That seems, I suppose, very atypical of at the moment, but we should also consider the flip side and the heat that we can have in the summer and heat waves. I think last year we had some melting roads around Cannock, some complexities around that. So it really does affect us as a council and the service that we deliver. So we're going to carefully consider that as well. Priority 3 is around supporting economic growth. There's a term, green skills. That's just skills within what we know as the green economy. I touched on that earlier, I suppose, just thinking about how we produce energy. But that's much, much wider. Those skills are a lot higher. It's harder to achieve that. With better paid jobs, we should see economic prosperity. And we're going to be working closely with businesses to deliver that. Priority 4 is around local nature recovery. Mostly supported with the alignment and support through the local nature recovery strategy. But also I've just highlighted one there that we're hoping to deliver within our own portfolios on county farms. We've investigated areas that we can maintain old hedgerows that have degraded somewhat, and that will add as positive contribution towards biodiversity. Also looking at areas that are less productive in an agricultural context and potentially planting them with trees or leaving them unfarmed. That could work very well in a flooding context in slowing down water flows so that our watercourses just have a little bit of give in them before that starts to impact on our roads and communities. Priority 5 is around waste minimisation. I think Councillor Minor sort of flesh this out a little bit earlier on, we've started to deliver what we've called a waste minimisation roadshow into some of our maintained schools, working in 2 districts initially, East Staffordshire Borough Council and Newcastle and Lyme Borough Council. We've gone into 10 schools. We're educating over 1,000 pupils, and it's very much around reuse, recycling, thinking about what you throw in the bin from a household context, but importantly from us, because we're the waste disposal authority, so we have to get rid of that. So it's about thinking what you can do as an individual or a family. But some really positive feedback from that, and we would like to push that out into our community hubs and also wider through our libraries as well. Priority 6, I touched on this a little bit earlier, around what the future looks like with an increased electricity demand. But also what we want to try and do is trying to enable businesses to reap the rewards of where they could go. So like a lot of things in life, knowledge is key, and what we'd like to do is really go out to businesses and explore with them the opportunities that they can reap from looking at solar or battery storage within their properties, which would reduce their own costs. We had some support last year through the BEES programme, Business Energy Support Programme, and we handed out, I think, £1.2 million. Unfortunately, that funding is stopped now, but it was really well received. So we're looking at really rolling that forward so that businesses are in a position to take that forward if further funding opportunities realise in the near future. Priority 7 is around multimodal transport. A lot of this can be delivered around the local transport plan, but looking internally, bullet point 3 on the slides there is around maximising efficiency for our home-to-school transport. We move thousands of children to and from school every single day, and making that as efficient and cost-effective as possible. And the last priority is around working with partners to deliver innovation around growth, transport, energy, buildings, waste, environmental adaptation. That's a huge subject. Some of that can be delivered around priorities with the Staffordshire Sustainability Board, which is a political board, non-decision-making board, which feeds into the Staffordshire Leaders Board, where the districts and boroughs and the county council come together to go forward collaboratively. We can also bring other public sector bodies in, other like-minded organisations. It's really about building that longer-term partnership, those long-term aspirations. Penultimate slide, just the risks. Budgets here, there's £509,000 budget allocated to funds within all the actions within here. Currently, that's 60% allocated in financial year 26-27. So when this goes to Cabinet, those funds are instrumental in really helping deliver this. Some of the items and actions were picked up within service budgets, and some won't, and that's what those budgets are there to support. And the plan is to go to Cabinet in March next month, and that's the end of my presentation. I welcome any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. And Councillor Miners, I'm going to have to correct you. It's been a lot longer than 18 years that Chemical Lane has been flooded. My first job was on Chemical Lane, and getting dropped off at the bus stop at Longport, I had to wear wellies in order to get to work. But other than that, and to pick up on solar panels, I'd just like everybody to know that it is an incredible idea to put solar panels on your own home. I'm still reaping the rewards. And even though I did it when we had the government incentive plan where you got so many pence per unit of energy you produce, with power prices they are today, solar still will pay itself off. It will bring you a benefit. And if you put that with a battery as well, I do have friends where in the summer they literally pay zero for their energy. But I would like to open it up to questions for the floor. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation from James. Very professional as always. But I think when looking at this strategy, first of all, I will say thank you for bringing this action plan that obviously sits on the back of the strategy. If you remember at the last meeting, I was pressing that should have come with the strategy, but we have it now. And I'm just sort of disappointed how flat this is. This agenda is really important. I know you wanted to take out all the references to climate change and net zero and all of that. And I think as we discussed at council when we agreed the motion that came forward, or we discussed the motion that came forward, we didn't have a problem with that. What we wanted to see was this environment agenda taken forward with vigour and with passion, which used to be taken forward in this council, particularly over the last few years. But this seems to be flat. I mean, obviously James has included some photos in his presentation there, but when I look at the actual strategy, the action plan attached to the strategy, then it's just flat words. There's no colour. There's no for people to get excited about. The public need to get behind this as well. Know that this county council is taking this problem seriously, and that's whether it be flooding, whether that be waste minimisation, whether that be all of the things wrapped around the environment strategy. So hopefully the portfolio could take that back and probably bring us a document that people could actually really get excited about. I think also the thing which really concerns me is the short-termism of this now, 1 year and 2 years. This agenda is a long-term agenda, whether we look at the flooding side of it, the waste minimisation side of it. These, as you mentioned, Chair, the solar panels. We've been putting solar panels on council buildings in this county for many, many years, and it's part of the programme and it goes forward. We used to have the 5-year programme, which fitted into a 20-30-year programme originally. So it's just I would criticise that, the short-termism of this, and I think that needs to be looked at as well. I think evidence-basing, particularly around preparedness for the flooding risks and the adaptations, needs to be developed and prepared as well. I think that's a bit light if we're going to really be serious about that agenda. And I think that public communication brings me back to actually how we present this. I don't think it's presented in a way that will catch people's imagination or think that this council is serious about this agenda. For the budget, I think welcome the over £500,000 in the budget. You said that money had been protected for this environmental programme, so that's good. My question would be, when the portfolio responds, is this our department soaking up a lot of this as well? Because there are a lot of actions in here that will be going back into budgets in departments, which will already be under pressure because of obviously the financial situations councils find themselves. So I think that needs to be answered as well. Is there a pushing of the cost of this onto departments, which particularly when we look at highways, for example, I remember there was a big decarbonisation programme in highways. I assume that's name's changed now, but I assume it's carrying on, and that needs to be funded as well if it's going to be successful. So also I notice in the plan, Chair, in the actions, is that we still will be, let me just get that up here to get the wording correct. Yeah, screen's gone. There we go. The carbon emissions monitoring, we will still be doing carbon emissions monitoring to support access to external funding. And of course, we always knew this. We have to tick the boxes for government to enable to bring funding in for some important environmental schemes, which will make a real difference to this council. So we'll have an annual reporting. So that how will that actually be formatted? Will that be a percentage of carbon reduction, which is exactly what we had before, and we reached over 50% of carbon reduction? So it's interesting to see an answer to that question. And then finally, I think the question back to the portfolio holders, in the community assessment at the end, it says that our climate is changing. It clearly says that. I just want the portfolio to just outline what he thinks the cause of that climate change is, because our officers have put it in the impact assessment, and it's something which we need to have policies around, and the portfolio's view on that would be really interesting. Thank you, Chair. A lot of questions there, but hopefully they've picked them up.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Very interesting synopsis of the environmental plan. And I do think it's very interesting. I think, as you said, there has been a lot of work being put in by the Staffordshire County Council team and steered in the right direction. As you correctly said, solar panels have been used for many years across Staffordshire County Council, and they are hopefully becoming more efficient. They're not that efficient. I think even the power in the UK at the moment is only about 5% supplied by solar panels. And obviously, they work very well in the summer. They don't work so well on days like today. And I would like to steer it back again to looking after our environment. It is really quite upsetting to drive to some areas I haven't driven to before and see the amount of environmental crime that's been going on over the years with nothing much being done to try and address and stop that. So I think we're going to really steer and have a look at that, even it overlaps with another portfolio to try and help that so people do feel they're living in a cleaner environment. Perhaps we can just basically say yes about the climate changing. Many thousands of years ago, there were glaciers across Staffordshire, so the climate does change. Plate tectonics and geology does carry on, but as in software technology changes. If I look at this, there was a fantastic visit to the Highways department in Lichfield to have a look at what the team is doing there with looking in granular detail with GIS software, looking at the relief and flooding. There was I went out to see a flood down in Aston Stone. So because we are perhaps having a little bit more money allocated to this and working and overlapping with the flood team, we do want to focus on this. We're not too much focused about telling everybody there's a big orange balloon and spending the money on that to say this is what a ton of CO2 looks like, and then many of the officers and people in the county still get on a plane and fly every year 4 hours across Europe. So we do want to encourage the next generation about looking after the environment, and we realise people still want to go on holiday, and we still want to look after the floods. This is a really, really nice piece of use of technology. I have asked the officers to explain this and go into schools and discuss how this is being used. You can see the topography. There's a 2-page report here which goes on about a particular part of a road that's being flooded and what we can do for that. There are 14 budgeted items here that we are going to work forward to, and one of those is looking at a pilot study to identify high-risk embankments along roads and prioritise those areas vulnerable to erosion and flooding and structural failure. This is working with the flooding team. I think also that missed the boat. I believe many years ago there was a look at the further north, the Cheshire Basin. Maybe you might know in your area of the Cheshire Basin there is a low enthalpy heat element. So we have actually been down to London to talk about the future of geothermal in the UK. You're quite welcome to have a look at that. That's actually moving forward with a cross-party committee in London, and a new minister has been allocated to look at low enthalpy heat in the UK. There is high enthalpy heat in the UK, which is going into the Eden project in geothermal. There's a number of wells have been drilled down in Cornwall, but it's quite expensive and very difficult. And so we want to focus, and we're looking at what's happening perhaps with our schools here, as well as putting, as you said, using solar panels on there. There is a way to look at low enthalpy geothermal heat analysis in the UK. Recently, there's a Scunthorpe General Hospital. There's been a project there, and the connection is connecting in January this year. So we want to look at that. So we are doing things differently. I disagree that we would just, it's very flat and not boring. If you do Google the future of geothermal in the UK, as we said, there's high-skilled jobs. So have a look at that, and we're quite happy for your team to get on board of that. I think even in North Staffordshire, the geothermal gradient will be a little heavier than that. I think that's probably covered most of the questions. I'm happy to take any more or cross over to my colleague here who might elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tagg, hopefully just picking up the couple of bits that were answered there. So reference to the actions and a sort of short-termist, there's 38 actions meant to be completed within 26-27, which leave 43 longer-term actions. They haven't got specific dates on those, and it's probably a bit, ongoing. I suppose those are the mid to longer-term actions. The proposal would be is we bring this back to Cabinet every year and refresh it once we've completed those short-term actions is then come back and think of some more good ideas. The carbon emissions monitoring will be done, so we calculate a tonnes of CO2 equivalent output. So currently it's about 19,500 tonnes. So we'll review that annually to see where we are against previous years. And then public engagement, referring to priority 8, actions 8.3.1 through to 8.4.3. That hopefully gives a bit more of a granularity of detail there around community learning course content, libraries, which is obvious. But I'd highlight 8.3.3, working in partnership with local groups to ensure community resilience programmes to impactful weather in place areas of greatest need, and also supporting them that maybe they can put things in practice that can help them and their local communities. And that's absolutely something that we'll push good and hard, is to work side by side with our communities to help each other. Thank you.
Councillor Tagg, follow up?
Yep, thank you. I don't think anybody is saying that this agenda is boring. I didn't say that. I said the counties, you've just put out your store here on this agenda, an action plan attached to it. I don't think that is positive enough. I don't think that is. And you talked about a carbon bubble. That actually got more people interested in the environment agenda probably than anything this county council had done previously. And then it went on to the eco house, the energy saving house. And I'm glad to see when James said about the waste minimisation project and campaign that you're doing. I think that's been going on for many years and has been building and building, and that's a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year programme, not a 12 or 24-month programme. So I'd make that point again. I think really for me, really, it's I think there is the softer language. We accept that. But I think there's weaker commitments. There's short-term focus, which I've just talked about. And then there's that funding issue. Didn't get an answer to the funding issue, whether this does get pushed back onto various departments to fund some of the actions within this plan. And I think, I genuinely want to see this council progress its plans on this. We had really good plans, I think, up until 2025 May. But of course, the new administration's come in and changed the focus. And we'll support this to get this done. But I think hopefully you'll take on board some of the comments about let's get more on the front foot on this, on these big issues of flooding, waste minimisation and all of that stuff. And let's show ambition back on this. You don't have to be a climate change Ed Miliband to have that, which I don't support Ed Miliband's approach. I think it's mad and would destroy the country if he had his way. But I think what we can do here is set our stall out positively to get people on board with this, how we can help them when there are flooding instances, how we can help them to recycle more, how we can also protect our green spaces, which we have massively on our country parks across the county. And that's a positive message, and I think that needs to be in here, and I don't think it is at the moment, Chair.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we do want to make sure we educate the next generation coming through. So we are focusing quite heavily here. And going back to talk about food waste, there's another, people will start to have a small food waste box that's been going on for many other councils in the country and being used very well. I think that's going to be really interesting and engage and get the next generation very interested about that. I still think that they should be looking at and we are briefing about them to the energy recovery centres, what they're doing with their waste, teaching them about looking after the environment, not throwing rubbish. Again, I think we mentioned a few weeks ago about the cost of nitrous oxide bottles and the criminality on that side. They are exploding in 4 ashes and stopping work there. So again, positive way for the next generation. We won't be here forever. And I think there are 14 elements here that are budgeted for. And we are progressing this portfolio forward.
Thank you for that. I must say I'm very excited about this potential geothermal energy coming from inside Staffordshire. I thought that was the area of Iceland, not the UK. But now I pass over to Councillor Jones, who has some questions.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do these one at a time. I'd like to say, with what has been said, apolitical and appreciative, and I'd like to have recognition of the hard work that's been put into all of this. I'd like to ask, can you confirm how the Environmental Action Plan will ensure legal compliance and measurable delivery across its 8 priority areas, particularly in relation to statutory obligations such as flood risk management, environmental resilience, nature recovery and adaptation, while also providing clear accountability for short-term actions over the next 1 or 2 years before the Unitary Authority comes in and the Ghost Authority comes in. Thank you.
So for each of the actions, there'll be a quarterly monitoring update. And as James said, we'll be bringing a new paper to Scrutiny each year to provide an update on the items. As you would expect, each item would be RAG rated, and those that will be completed would potentially look for new ideas for going forward to replace those ones. So there's budget, there'll be continuous budget monitoring, but also we're looking for progress updates. If there are any issues with progress, we'll be flagging those up with Councillor Miners and then bringing these here to update you all on. So continuous monitoring throughout on this action plan.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question is, what financial risks or pressures have been identified in delivering the Environmental Action Plan, and how will these be mitigated? Thank you.
I think there's always a risk in Environmental Action Plan. I think it's working together closely, personally, with the Environmental Agency, because I do know the Lichfield Highways team works very closely with the Environment Agency. They're very close. But in the past, we felt that the Environment Agency has perhaps struggled on a number of issues, especially in regards environmental crime, and working through with that. I would like to, again, as we're talking about education for the next generation, the Environmental Agency hotline is 0800 807060, and Crime Stoppers is 0800 555 111, I hope. So, you know, we want to make sure that people live in a beautiful place, and not to, you know, to look after their rubbish and mitigate that risk. Some of our household waste recovery centres, we have, you know, ongoing visits from the Environmental Agency, so there is risk, and especially I have a HSE briefing every month with the team about, we have a number of people visiting our household waste recovery centres. We're doing we've won awards in London this year about what we're doing with our household waste recovery centres, what we're doing to stop a lot of items going to landfill, etc. So I think it's very positive, very exciting, and our communications team, I believe, are putting that out there to the community. They are doing very well to highlight this, and again, we will pass on eventually. The next generation must be really engaged with this, and we hope the Staffordshire County Council that we're going to do that in schools and teams we manage. That the Staffordshire Showground this year in May, I think we're going to have a tent, and we are going to focus actually on the environment and household waste recovery centres and what we're doing in Staffordshire in that department. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. And my final question is, how will the action plan ensure that vulnerable communities may be most affected by severe weather, as we've had recently, and energy costs are actively protected and supported, please? Thank you. That's it. Thanks, Chair.
Can you just repeat the question again about that? I'm just picking up.
Yes, my final question is, how will the action plan ensure that vulnerable communities may be most affected by severe weather like we've had recently, and energy costs are actively protected and supported going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think the energy cost is absolutely ridiculous at the moment. If people's household bills have increased substantially, and I put this fully at the foot of the government that we've had in power for the last 18 months. It's been ridiculous. So at Staffordshire County Council, we are working, for example, with highways, working with looking at when new housing developments are built, what we do with that. Working again with the Environment Agency. We've been here in Staffordshire County Council. We work well with the Staffordshire Sustainability Board for the whole of Staffordshire, to look at what we're doing with people. I think as councillors, we're going out to our communities as parish councils, up to 21 parish councils over 8 months, and listening to people of what they think, and take that on board and pass that through to the officers of what people do feel about flooding risk mitigation. Cleaning gullies is very important. I think we focused on perhaps going back to gullies which we know and hotspots are going to flooding. The Report It tool is absolutely a really elemental, very useful for people to have a look at. And again, I go back to working with people and the communities as the fair approach to community flood risk. Again, giving people the information where to go, and some people aren't actually even connected to the internet. So we've been working well on a different portfolio to get vulnerable people up in Staffordshire Moorlands connected to apps to let them know when particular storms might be coming in, or engaging and helping them because they haven't got family and people around them. I've yet to have the first feedback for that coming through. But again, it's a very exciting, very useful, very positive message that I think that Staffordshire Council is doing for its residents in that matter. Thank you.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for... I'm slightly different councillor tag. I'm quite excited because I could see them pictures, and every one of them pictures I could make work in my area. What I would like, if possible, is a designated officer of some description who spend just half a day with me and go round and look at my area. I know it like the back of my hand. I know where the gullies used to be cleaned when I was a child and they're not clean now. I know where the litter is. I know where... So these little things, and I just feel like if we could have... I met an officer the other day to look at a footway on a former railway track, which would tick a lot of them boxes, planting trees, you know, and I want to feed that back to another committee because that's what I'm trying to get together. So and in my area, Teen and Chatley, there's a flooding issue as we speak, and Severn Trent are dealing with sewerage going into the river. So this connected to that, working together, would help. And yeah, so that's all I'm asking, if I could have some officers' time in my area. And I think that would help us, would me, on quite a few things, even from the highways, you know, jumping in the highway inspector van and going a ride round instead of just like 20,000 emails. So that's just, because I'm a pretty simple sort of guy, that's how I look at it. And back to your food waste, I mean, we're all getting on a little bit. I remember you scraped all your food off at the school and the guy come and collected it and fed his pigs with it. Now, I'd like to think going forward, I don't think we'll probably get that bit back, which is a shame really, because we had the nicest sausage and bacon in our area. But going forward, I would like to think that food waste can be used for something better, you know, reprocessed for food or for fertiliser or something like that, which is, I suppose, where we're going, aren't we? But apart from that, I think it was brilliant. Thank you very much.
So I'll answer part two first. I agree. We are moving forward with this small caddy bin to a lot of your green bin. 30% of it is actually food waste at the moment, and so we're moving forward very fast. And there are other districts in Staffordshire that have been actually using this across the whole of the country. They've been sitting using this. They were worried perhaps they're even going to give some free liners for it because they were worried there wouldn't be the uptake. We need people to get positive behind this. I've seen some draft communications plans which are very positive. It is an overlap, of course, with the borough and the county council of pickup and dropping off of the waste. I think that's very positive, very interesting. And again, that will really engage the young people. I think they maybe look at how much food that they're wasting. Maybe you might be potentially throwing away a kilo a day into these small bins. I think it should be engaging for children. They should get behind it and make sure their parents start to use that. I think that's very interesting. And as for going out to various areas over the last few months, I've been lucky enough to work with the Lichfield Highways team, been to the Stone Depot, had a look at what the Highways team are doing there, listen, understanding the challenges with the 37 gritters that they have, working the night shift as we had the 2 days of snow, and an allocation and putting back the grit in the difficult areas, especially in your section of Staffordshire. I think it's very, very difficult and challenging. And to walk around Hopton with the residents and the parish council to go into the details, look at their challenges, their potholes, their flooding, I think is very important to listen to them and make an action plan, which the Staffordshire County Council is doing, and discussing how the extra budget's coming forward. The allocated, I think, £15 million for the roads. A lot of these roads have been degraded for years and years. It's very challenging, and to explain to people about frost thaw and things. It's nice to be with the communities to do that in Hopton, and also in, where was it? In Whitgrave as well, to go up there and have a look at their roads, discuss with the farmers even, it's very important, whether they're moving speed indication devices. Again, the highways team going out there, and also where else was it been? Yeah, and the flooding lanes again, to go out and see the people, listen to them. They're very frustrated, and they often haven't found it easy to know where to go to the council. They didn't know how to use the report system, for instance. So an hour out of an officer's time is very valuable, but it is that time out, and they have had a huge increase over the last few weeks, should we say, of call-outs and emergency, and explain to them how we're doing that. People are often confused of why have I seen a white marker around a pothole, but nothing else happens, and and to listen and engage with people with that. I think people have been very frustrated about bus routes, so we've been engaging with that as well. So there's a lot of overlap of what we're delivering into the environment, actually. So I hope that helps. And do contact me if you want to get some people up to your area. I promise myself to get up there to Cheadle and see your team. You're welcome. Thank you.
Is yourself and an officer come up and give me a couple of hours. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thanks for the report. So I just have a question about the waste minimisation and how we deal with environmental crime, because there's a lot of money in environmental crime. People fly tip in. It could be materials like asbestos, chemicals. What more can we do regarding this? Because it says in the report that we're lobbying the government and the regulation agencies. Is that all we can do regarding it? And try and get them to get on top of this, because that's my question. What more can we do? And
Yeah, from my point of view, we have been working and having meetings and discussing it in depth, but there's another portfolio that we're working together as well to bring environmental crime, whether it's putting cameras up in these places. We also have to work well with the police to see where they're being, where these areas of environmental crime. I just saw a picture about an hour ago of another fly tip in the Wombourne area, and as you've all seen over the news, it's been happening heavily, and maybe we look at what happened there in Oxfordshire. There's perhaps $1 million problem there, and people haven't been realising it. Maybe they didn't know who to report to. The Environment Agency haven't been quick enough onto site. So we're working together to look at that work for the Environment Agency, but also having to work with the borough council as well, because there's a responsibility of, you've spotted it, who's going to go there and take it away. And residents are very frustrated that their lane, obviously suddenly ends up having asbestos in, or all of this is very unfortunate, and it really is not nice to live in a country where you see that environmental crime. And I believe it's about a billion pound, criminal epidemic of waste crime.
Yeah, thanks for that. I know there's a lot of money in these people, if we can get them, just dumping materials, and because I know I've heard a few going on where dump the bad materials first and cover it with wood or whatever. And of course, we have to go there, test what's actually in that dump. Then we find out there's all this going on, and of course, that's not great for the environment and the habitats here. And I'm just seeing, what can we do? But
just to add on what Councillor Mine said, this is an item now, and a recurring item for the Staffordshire Sustainability Board. So I think it's an opportunity to understand the fly tipping issues across the county from all the different districts and boroughs to see the extent of the problem. I don't think individually we know what that extent is. That will then enable us to do that lobbying that you discussed previously. So it is a theme that we are looking at.
Councillor Tagg.
Just on the comments about, obviously, the food waste collections. Newcastle Borough's done those since 2010. I brought those in my first spell of leadership there, and we do provide a caddy liner to people. It's popular with those people that do it. I think we were the only council in Staffordshire doing it in the region originally, so it never got the national exposure, but with now being a national scheme, I think we'll see increases in use, and I agree with what colleague next to me said. It's it's actually I enjoy doing it, and a lot of people do, because you see this is the stuff that really is going in the bin that shouldn't be going in the bin. It goes off to plants to be digested and create energy and all sorts of things. And it's really a good way of recycling, a really visible way. So, and I know that the Newcastle Borough Council officers are working closely with the county team on that rollout across the county. So really pleased with that. My last sort of point on the action plan is the lack of sort of performance indicators on a lot of these points that are in the plan. I think what we used to have was the measure against the carbon reduction, didn't we, and the resilience around the government's agenda on that. So without those sort of KPIs, as they're called, key performance indicators, how are we going to have accountability? Because I know James just said that it will continually come back to Cabinet, it'll come back to here for updates, and obviously reviews of where we are on the action plan. So is there a plan, ask the Cabinet member, for those performance indicators to be included, so we can judge as members, and I think we all agree we want to judge the progress on this and the successes on this as well, and then that would roll forward obviously into your next plan with even stronger and more stringent targets and indicators going forward as you move down the route of this plan.
Yeah, I think, thank you for the question. Yeah, there is 91, have I said, so there really is accountability there. So I really welcome you to hold us account to all of those 91 actions there. And we are looking at a quarterly review for this, so we make sure that we roll this through every quarter. And I think we must engage quite nicely. There is a lot of overlap, and again, that's kind of a positive thing, that the whole of Staffordshire is involved with that. We've had meetings in this room where there is over 25 different people. We've had interesting presentations. We've already been down for a field trip to look at ourselves down at the Four Ashes recycling centre there and see the challenges that they face there. That's where we learnt about the problems of the nitrous oxide bottles. You could see them. There was it's about 2 or 3 kilos of a bottle that's there that's blown up in their plant, and they had a video of that. So that's working quite well on a Staffordshire sustainability for a quarterly report on that. And we do want to roll forward a quarterly output, I believe, on what we're doing with the environmental action plan. There's no point doing a plan if we don't update it, if we don't use that plan, use that budget to go back and, as we said, to keep going back to educating the younger generation, educating people on like yourselves, Councillor Tagg.
I think it's okay to have actions, but you need to have targets and deliverable figures against them. I'm not hearing that from the portfolio holder. I don't know if James is planning to work those up over the next period, but I think he's looking at some of these key actions in the plan. There is no measure of success as an end date or a time frame, but I think that's really important, and it'll be, a lot of plans that come to this county council and go to all council have those performance indicators so we can measure the success, and that's part of our job of scrutiny. So I would leave that with the portfolio to go away and see if we can have some of those, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I don't mind having a matrix to see where we can do this. I mean, when I saw the gentleman who was up in Chemical Lane, he said, the council have been promising us to fix this problem for 18 years. 18 years, and nothing's happened. It's affected his family, his business, his flooding. Nothing happened. Nothing came back to me. He's really frustrated. So we told him, well, we are trying to work multi-agency here. And I took his business card and says, well, we'll get back to you on that. So we have come back from being at the coalface, should we say, listening to the public, and we want to work through that with our team. So I can go back to the gentleman in Chemical Lane and say, here's our environmental action plan, here's what we're doing, because they're really frustrated. He was so upset that his lane, his business has been flooded there. The front of his steps of his business were completely potholed because the flooding was there. And then the weekend after, it flooded again. But they are working through, and they do have a budget with that. And we did pull in the Staffordshire County Council reps, and Amy are up to his lane. And we promised, we'll be accountable, and we'll make sure we action this. So yeah, we will make sure we deliver this and put a percentile on how we're delivering that, so we can mark our homework, should we say. Thank you.
Yeah, just ready to come in to support Councillor Miners there. Excuse me. it's challenging with removal of a target, which is just trying to get to zero by a predetermined date. But I think hopefully the committee is in agreement that there's 38 ambitious actions to be completed within the next 12 months after approval in Cabinet. We'll be monitoring that on a quarterly basis. I suppose the proof of the pudding will be, have we achieved that? Have we knocked off those 38 short-term actions? We can also provide a report detailing what was achieved, where it was achieved and when it was achieved, so there's full transparency, not just internally but also externally, so that the public can see what the council has done to help and support communities, businesses and ourselves.
Yeah, I look at the action plan and I look at, for example, I'll just choose one, 4.11, 4.12, which is securing funding for hedgerow planting programmes across the county farms estate, and a proposed phase hedgerow planting programme, rollout of phase one. How many, I don't know, kilometres, hundreds of metres, or are we planning to plant for that? How can we say whether it's been delivered and is successful? That's the sort of detail I think we need against all of these. And, you know, that's something which we should be doing as a standard. You know, key performance indicators are really important. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you. I agree. We have 120 kilometres of hedgerows, we believe, across the county farms. Some of them are looking pretty, you know, in a bad shape, should we say. So we do want to, as well as working with the county farms, what we're doing with looking at reducing the energy costs. We want to hold onto our farms. We don't want to sell them, and we certainly don't want them to be having huge solar farms on them, as Ed Miliband seems to want to do in the central government. So I agree. It will be nice to give you the reports of which farm has done where, and when we've planted the hedgerows. Again, there's another overlap, I think, with the other portfolios as well of what we're doing for the farms and biodiversity, because it all comes under the sustainability budget, as what we're saying here. As you said, we've just cancelled the word, but we're still wanting to make sure we look after the environment and pass that on to our children. It'd be nice to take some children out who are doing A-level geography and show them what we're doing on these county farms and educate them. I think there's a huge disconnect of students these days of what a farmer does, how he does it, when he does it, how the environment affects what a farmer is doing, and having a look at those hedgerows. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I think one of the measures for that one particularly could be the number of species per 100 yards in a hedgerow, which makes it actually an authentic hedgerow is a number of different tree species and bushes. So that could be an indicator for that one, for example. Just trying to help there. But I think we do need these, and I'll make the point again, how can we scrutinise success on this?
Yeah, I agree. There are some elements of what we're doing in Staffordshire County Council with Amy and looking at the cost element for less cuts. So we are actually in the old Staffordshire University up at the crossroad there. There's a children have got involved, and I think that was probably under your administration. There's a sign there that says, you know, the number of species that are working there. There is another portfolio working for that biodiversity and net gain, etc. I think it's from the Environmental Act 2021 or something. So again, focusing, spending a lot of time, as we're doing today, on this talking, debating, making sure people appreciate here. Hopefully, we can get people to come to Staffordshire. Businesses will thrive here, and we can get people, perhaps with young children, who don't jump on an aeroplane and fly 4 hours away, and will enjoy Staffordshire, will enjoy going around our farms, going around Staffordshire. Some of our reservoirs up in the north, where your area are, is absolutely beautiful. We don't think they're using those enough. There should be people able to cycle. That covers the local transport plan, and use those wonderful areas that you have in North Staffordshire, in the moorlands, to encourage people and tourism, and perhaps people who have young families to stay here and enjoy Staffordshire for a week during the summer vacation. Thank you.
Councillor Pendleton.
For that.
Oh, Gary.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to revisit the geothermal energy. Now, I don't know whether this was covered in what was mentioned earlier, but I've seen that some areas are using heat from closed mines to provide clean, low-carbon energy. Can I ask whether the Cabinet has any plans to look into whether this kind of geothermal system could work here in Staffordshire? And if not, would you consider exploring it?
I can answer that one. I think a lot of the mines, I think that's been looked at, this is the low enthalpy heat. It's in of the coal mines of the northern England, perhaps in Nottinghamshire area. I believe in Staffordshire, perhaps, maybe obviously there's Cannock coal mines, Cannock Chase. I would, we can have a look at that, and it is being used for that. Again, when you say geothermal, it's low enthalpy heat. It's not hot. Yeah. So if you drill down to 600 meters, you might get about 60 degrees heat. So you might be able to use that to try and keep a building temperature at 20 degrees in the winter, and also use that for cooling in the summer. So that's what we're sort of looking at, and we're steering our team to go and have a look at today. This card has only been produced about a week ago. It's very fresh from the printers. So we are looking at that. And again, that's what the steer is for this environmental action plan, to look at all things, looking at huge amount of cost that we have at the moment to pay for our energy. So, yeah, we want to look at that. And that's your answer to your geothermal. Watch this space, should we say? Yeah.
What I was actually referring to, and what I've read about, is mines that have been flooded. The actual geothermal energy from the floodwater.
It is. There is our examples. We'll have to dig in deep and have a look at that. I'm not sure whether they are actually being used, but there are mines. It might be in South Wales. It might be in Nottingham. But I think perhaps in Staffordshire, the way to look at things is the low empathy heat. But there are, at this meeting in London, there were about 15 companies presenting there for the future. There was a new energy type of minister that's been put forward, and there were 2 MPs there talking about why we've not looked at low empathy geothermal heat. Nobody from this county council has gone to a place called Offenburg in the last 10 years. Offenburg is a yearly geothermal conference at the end of February, where they look at all of the geothermal activity and heat in Europe and how they heat their towns in Europe. Although it's a higher empathy heat, there are a lot of people looking at how they use in Holland, for example. They're using it to heat greenhouses. Staffordshire is a very rural area. Perhaps also you could look at that to be, building up and using that to encourage the horticultural industry and enjoy eating much more lovely Staffordshire tomatoes again, rather than horrible Spanish tomatoes.
Councillor Bentley.
Sorry for butting in earlier. Spot on with the mines. I remember my father saying it was that hot down there, they wore just like their underpants. It's a shame really the previous administration didn't put a few pipes in before they blocked them all off. But that's that. But the 2 things I wanted to bring up is, one, I'm on the farming process, and we are looking at solar panels on the farms and the hedgerows, and the farms can put in for that, the grants to do the hedgerows. They're reinstating them. If you look at your farmland as you're driving around, they tend to keep them in the middle of the fields. There's one that me and Sue have been past today where he's obviously had the grant to replant the hedge down the middle of the 2 fields that's probably it was took out in the past when we didn't think the same as we're thinking now. But the other one I was more important with, and I think this would be brilliant for our area because it was on Stoke-on-Trent Live, so it must be true, that they've caught somebody doing commercial waste, sentenced him to prison, and got all his assets. What's the word where they recover all the assets and sell them off? What's of gain? Crime. I can't think what the word is I'm after. But process of, yes. Is that something that we could tap into? So technically, somebody's took all his assets. It was millions. It weren't like hundreds of thousands. It was millions. It's in the area. It's in the Staffordshire Moorlands. Is that something we could tap in and then invest that money into cleaning the areas up that we want clearing up on the back of that? So technically, you can't get, we want clean areas up, and then we could, just a thought anyway. Thank you.
Yeah,
we have responsibilities around environmental safety, so we have a planning team that inspects the misuse of sites for illegal waste, and we work really closely with the Environment Agency. We work really closely with the police to support on any of those and taking any of those criminals down, and we can therefore get access to proceeds of crime when we're part of that sting operation. So yeah, we work really closely with those partners.
Ask then going forward, not just in this meeting, if we can talk, because this was only 2 months ago, it was all over, you know, are we tapping into it? That's what I'm concerned about. We don't want to be missing a trick, do we?
Yeah, I will find out for you.
Okay, final question, Councillor Beardmore.
My question just goes back to the geothermal topic that we talked about. There was actually a huge study done about 10 years ago within Stoke-on-Trent for district heating networks. So there will be quite a bit of information out there to do with the North Staffordshire mines and the mines under Newcastle and Stoke-on-Trent. So that would be a really interesting thing to look into, really, I think. And I have actually got some information on that if I can help with that at any time. Okay. Thank you.
If you could share the information with myself, james.cartwright@staffordshire.gov.uk. We're pleased that there's huge potential for underground, whether it's geothermal or mine heat, you know, both of them slightly separate disciplines. With mine heat, there's 2 areas of the UK that got the operational as district heating scheme in the northeast. There's also a small housing scheme of about 15 and 20 houses in Wales. It does work. I have had previous conversations with the Coal Authority just about where that heat is and how sustainable it is in the longer term, because you need it to be there for a long, long time. I think there is opportunity to work closely with the districts and boroughs to see where they're going to expand in their new houses, and if there's opportunities, because you need that load, don't you, to be there in the first place, because retrofitting and digging up roads is really expensive and may make it non-viable in that first instance. So looking at new areas is certainly an opportunity. So if you forward that over, I'll gladly read it. Thank you.
It really is the last one, Councillor Bentley.
It was a little one. Back to ourselves on our waste recycling centres where we burn where we burn the waste. Do we do anything with the energy we make there? You know, like on the fire you had a back boiler years ago made hot water. And back to your greenhouse idea, is that something that we can consider where we harness the energy that they've used? I'd like to see a swimming bath next to the one in Stoke, just something as simple as that in my little wisdom. You know, it's free hot water, isn't it? So just something like that, but probably for another day. But thank you.
So yes, at our waste recovery facility at Four Ashes, the electrical generation does create an income for the local authority. So yeah, we do capture that.
Okay, well, thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for your answers. I would just like to say that we acknowledge that you have given us this report, and we would like you to come again in 6 months and give us a further update, please, if that is acceptable. Yeah. Okay, we now move on to the next item, which is the Staffordshire Highways roadmap to a better road network. We will just have 5 minutes while we swap the chairs around.
Just postpone it for a couple of minutes.
Okay, it seems as though the meeting's gone on a little too long for a lot of people, so we're just going to have a very short 5-minute comfort break, and then we will come back. Okay, apologies to the public for that, but we'll go over that again. We are now moving on to item 6. Staffordshire Highways, a roadmap to a better road network. And I go to Councillor Mason to present.
Thank you. This item is to present the Highways, our roadmap to a better network. It's a multi-year improvement programme. It's been developed in response to the long-standing national and local issues with roads and structural condition. Nationally, the backlog is huge, it's immense, and Staffordshire faces the same challenge. Locally, our backlog is significant across all asset types. The roadmap seeks to set out a smarter, more efficient repair methods and a more coordinated and proactive approach to how we deliver those repairs. Focuses on fixing the roads, saving our structures and tackling the backlog. It comes with strong governance, KPIs and risk monitoring, and more details of that should be in your members' packs for you to look at in more detail. So today we're asking the committee to agree the programme plan and objectives, note progress to date, review key risks and milestones, and agree a schedule of ongoing reporting to this committee. James and Katie have prepared some slides in more detail to give you an overview of the report. I'd like to hand over to them to present that.
So I'll just say thanks, Councillor Mason, and good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I'm a little bit hoarse, so I'll do my best, but I'm sure Katie will pick up the slack. Have you heard the roadmap itself is Stafford's structured approach, a coordinated response to dealing with continued deterioration of roads and footways and structural assets across Staffordshire. It brings together strands of improvement activity into a single. Are you moving on? No, we're on that one. Into a sort of single unified programme of work to derive improved efficiency and better outcomes. So I've just got a few slides which are just going to outline the context and strategic drivers, some of the priority themes about how the programme is structured, and then I'm going to hand over to Katie, who will say a lot more about the progress to date, the next layers, the governance arrangements and so So as Councillor Mason's already mentioned, committee members will be very, very aware about the scale of the challenge across the UK. Years of underinvestment has resulted in significant and long-term deterioration to local roads. And those national estimates now place the combined backlog of road maintenance across the country at around about £16 billion. That's just for carriageways alone. If you include the structures and other key assets into that calculation, that number rises to a staggering 50 billion, or that sort of area. And Staffordshire is, as a local picture, is just a reflection of that. So say this roadmap brings together a strategic plan of action, which is built on 4 key drivers for improvement. It's firstly, we've got the need to try and maximise the value of every pound that we spend in terms of the works that we do here locally. Secondly is a commitment to smarter planning and innovation, improving how we design, how we schedule, how we deliver works right across the county to help minimise disruption. Thirdly is the stronger collaboration, both internally, the way we coordinate and plan our works, but then also with utility providers and external partners as well, to make sure that we're, again, maximising the benefit of the works and different organisations' investment to do things once and robustly and effectively, but also to minimise disruption. And then finally, that's all focused on resilience and safety. So in obviously the previous agenda item, we heard about the Council's Environmental Action Plan and touched on some of the priority actions needed to ensure the network is fit for purpose and able to withstand sort of increasing volatile weather and the challenges that we get, and how all that aligns to the Council's strategic priorities for 2026 to 2028. So again, that's a key component to this roadmap programme. And the next item, actually, we will also be talking about adaptation on the agenda, which is quite timely. So in terms of the programme structure, it's split into 3 priority outcomes. The first priority is fix our roads. This focuses, as the title says, on reducing disruption through smarter working, more efficient road repairs, improving how we plan and coordinate work so that residents and businesses experience fewer repeat visits and fewer unplanned delays as a consequence of better planned works but more durable repairs. The second priority is to save our structures. That's kind of the hidden asset, I think. We all focus on the paved surfaces, the footways, the carriageways, but those buried assets that we don't tend to focus so much on, and that is actually perhaps a bigger challenge. And the saving of structures recognises that growing pressure in those bridges, those retaining walls, and say those other critical structural assets. And it's about being proactive on our management, on our investment for preventing deterioration rather than responding to future failures. The third priority is to address the backlog. So we currently have over 30,000 outstanding safety defects across our highway network in Staffordshire. The roadmap itself commits us to being able to get on top of that backlog of defects, which drag us off responding to safety critical activities all the time. By removing that, we can focus more on planned, preventative, structural renewal type work, which is more efficient, more effective, and less disruptive for road users. And then supporting all those 3 priorities there is a clear programme of governance, good structure that provides good oversight of the programme, good regular reporting, of which this committee we propose will be part of that governance arrangement. And that will help us to maintain the momentum of the programme, manage the interdependencies across the different activities, ensure the improvements we make are part of an aligned service. And then this last slide I've got just before I'm going the wrong way. Last slide I've got there, just before I hand over to Katie, is on this slide. It just gives a visual overview of how the roadmap all pieces together. So we've talked about those 3 strategic outcomes, which are summarised across the bottom of the page there. That's the fixing our roads, saving our structures and addressing the backlog. And then it's set out, the rest of the programme is set out in these 4 sort of colour-coded work streams. So in the blue stream there, on the left-hand side, you've got the strategic reforms. So that's about improving our communication with our residents and businesses, being more proactive and honest. It's about applying greater emphasis on geographic work scheduling, with greater impact on repairing places rather than just individual defects. And all that comes with greater coordination of our own works and combining with other providers as well that work on our network. And ultimately, it's about extending that, say, to all third parties, whether it's developers, utilities, and any other third parties. In the green work stream there, we've got the tactical innovation. That's about embracing research and development in new technologies for more durable and first-time fixes. It aims to build on a sort of greater mix of different delivery types that's more responsive and empowers local teams to be able to deliver the maintenance activities that really make a difference locally. In the sort of third, I don't know whether you call that orange or sort of salmony pink colour, it's about budgetary efficiencies. So in order to support the case for better and fairer funding from central government and other sources, we have to be able to demonstrate that everything we're doing now is as effective and as cost efficient and effective as we can. We already do quite a bit of work around that, around government requirements around transparency reporting and so on, but it's about being able to demonstrate and satisfy ourselves quite easily for the value for money that we deliver through our highway maintenance services. That includes a targeted programme of efficiency improvements, including reduction in our sort of operating overhead costs to make sure that we maximise, of every pound we spend, the maximum amount is getting to work on the ground rather than all the sort of management costs that go with that. And that work stream also includes a 2-year work programme to tackle that backlog of work stat defects that I say are inefficient when we have to keep responding to them all the time. If we could just get on top of that, we could then move to a much more planned, proactive programme of preventative and renewal maintenance, which is more efficient and effective. And then on the sort of proper pink work stream there, which cuts across all the other work streams, it's about really being able to strengthen our case for legislative reform, whether that's about fairer funding, but also about how we manage third-party works through the existing legislation, which hasn't always got quite the teeth that we'd like it to have. And all in all comes better together to provide a best value whole life approach to managing our highway asset. So at that point, I'll say no more. I'll hand over to Katie to say a bit more give a bit more update on the progress of the programme so far and the next stages. That one.
That's it. Hi everyone. So just wanted to give you a bit of an update about the success so far and some of the key themes that have come out from the work that's taken place to date. And I think the biggest one is that collaboration element within our own directorate. We've had struggles before where we're all trying to work together. So that's one of the things we'll be addressing first as part of this roadmap. And I think Councillor Mason's key focus for us is output-focused delivery. So far we've managed to successfully implement the Keep Staffordshire Moving element. We've got enhanced communication processes already embedded into the service. Additional gully crews have been implemented from January. We've had workshops and continue to have workshops to map out areas for improvement across the service. We've got a coordination model in place now and we will be pushing for further collaboration. We are working on a local delivery model and we aim to have that in place by April, which will have enhanced community insight driving our works. And then digital innovation and opportunities, as these are enablers a lot of this work to be successful. Hopefully the slides are in the right order for me to click. There we go. So some of our areas of focus currently, whilst delivering that, is that technology aspect of the works and AI tools. So we are exploring some of those opportunities we've got with our partner and making sure that we are matching those opportunities internally as well to see if there's things for us to explore, small, quick-win digital solutions to help us be more efficient. We've got process review in terms of creating holistic review of systems, again, linked in with the above one. A lot of our processes are quite laborious, so we're trying to see if there's opportunities to streamline some of what we do to get programme effectiveness going forward. We're looking to empower local teams, as I've said. We're really hoping to have a local depot team for each of the areas across the county and make sure their community insight is driving and instructing some of our works, making sure that we're factoring some of the key community issues that we have locally. We've got a structures action plan being built to make sure that we have identified our top priority structures and establish a good plan that addresses them, whether it's lobbying for additional funding or just making sure that we've got a clear plan to effectively manage the structures going forward. And then we have a backlog action plan, and that's pretty much the same as the structures, but identifying those clear backlogs and making sure that we've got a plan to address them going forward. We have had sign off on our delivery plan. This clicker doesn't like me. There we go. So as I've said, we've got the costed backlog work bank. That's our priority for April 26. Our asset repairs April 26 as well, and establishment of local area depot teams, April 26. They're in red because they are our priorities at the minute, but we have got a much wider programme of work which James has covered in terms of that fixing our roads, save our structures and address our backlog. There's multiple facets within that we need to deliver, and the timelines are all listed there. This is just a bit of an overview of the governance that the programme has, so that you can all see the reporting that all of the work will go through. We've got lots of boards to report our KPIs to, so there will be large oversight really with all of the officers, all of the KPIs, status updates against the progress of each work stream that we are running. Some of the key risks that we wanted to flag, there is a long risk register, but I've tried to summarise and just pull some of the key ones we've got. I know that in the members' packs there are a detailed list of the risks, but just wanted to flag with everybody here today that the reduction in government funding and the lack of long-term funding that we get does hinder our planning in terms of that long-term aspect of planning. The local government reorganisation, the LGR, obviously is a risk for everything. Adverse weather impacts, as the item before us has pointed out, we've got climate impacts of how we're actually delivering our work, more pressure on the network, more deterioration. We've got member priority conflicts, making sure that we're delivering to the member priorities that we've set to deliver and it not impacting operations that we are doing. And then the staff capacity to deliver the mixed priority of works whilst trying to deliver BAU. Pretty standard risks for a programme of this volume, but it would be remiss to not mention them. There we go. Just wanted to do a bit of a recommendations recap of our ask of this scrutiny. So we wanted to note and agree the programme plan, consider progress made, consider key risks and milestones, and agree reporting schedule for future. We do recommend every 4 months. And that's everything from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation and obviously the report and all appendices that are attached to it. I open the room up to questions. Councillor Baker.
Thanks for the report. Just on the local response teams, and these should be set up in April, right? What will they look like, say, at my local depot? What's going to be the change? Like, will I see, is there going to be, like, how do I see that change and what it's going to be like? Just any information on that would be quite nice.
In terms of the local response teams, the aim is to bring the local knowledge and priorities into delivering those responses. Now, the local response teams are aimed at those reactions where we get reports and issues, which particularly at this time of year are significant. But the way in which we respond to them and how we prioritise which we get, we have statutory obligations, but where there's conflicts, we want that local knowledge to drive the outcome. The idea of the local response teams is to try and minimise the amount of disruption in our planned works that we experience. What you can experience at the moment is going in with a morning to do some planned work and finding you're reacting to some event. That takes them off the planned works, which you don't recover in that day. It may not be efficient during that day in terms of how much time they spend on response compared to how much they could have spent going through the actual planned works. And the idea of the local response teams is to actually try to mitigate that by having them on reaction. And when they haven't got something to react to, they can have, if you like, low priority rolling planned works as well, that they then supplement their working day with. But the first priority is to get out there, fix whatever the issue is, make sure it meets local priorities and understanding and the effects that may come from it. And also, through the innovation, we're seeking to try and do that once, so we don't have to make second visits. So we're looking at ways where those fixes become more enduring, and we can then roll them back into the cycle of planned maintenance downstream.
Yeah, so the innovation side of it, where you don't have to go back to the same pothole, because we know that these reactive works, usually there's a massive pothole, put some tarmac into it, and after like a snowy period like we've had, it gets worse. Is there better, like more innovation, like new ways where we can stop doing these reactive works? And yeah.
That is the challenge, and that is what innovation we're looking at. We have got some trials out there at the moment. The technologies we're looking at are aimed at creating an environment where we can go and fix something once, with confidence it'll be more enduring than a temporary repair. Now, I'm not going to make a promise here that we're not going to make temporary repairs, because when you get a winter like we're having at the moment with the extreme and prolonged cold and the certainly extreme wet that follows, the level of events that we're seeing from a life-expired network, and that's what we have, a network that's degraded, is significant. And in those circumstances, we have a statutory obligation to repair, make it safe, and we have time responses to that. And that will mean at times we will still be doing temporary repairs in those peak times. But the aim is to minimise those number of repairs and to find a way in which we do them with a one-visit solution, not a temporary solution, then we have to go back 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later and do it again in a more permanent form. That might cost more for the initial repair, but overall it adds a lot of value to the pounds in the ground, because 2 visits costs a lot more than 1 with planning and everything else. So we're going through that innovative loop at the moment. We're looking at all different methods of doing it. We've got some on trial, some going better than others. We're looking at what else is out there. We're also potentially looking to go to the suppliers and set them a challenge and say, this is what we want. What do you have? What do you do elsewhere? What do you have in your locker? Or what could you look to bring to us that will meet this challenge? So that is part of that innovative challenge that makes up the roadmap.
Thanks for that. I assume that there's a challenge with the different suppliers because they do use different, maybe not techniques, but different types of tarmac. I assume so. And so that is something you're going down where you tell that supplier, like, can you try this method, or is that happening then?
A bit more controlled than that, yeah. The methods they use at the moment can vary depending on what the reaction is, what's available, the nature of the weather, what the defect is, and what we need to do with it. So there is a mix out there already, but the technology challenge and the innovative challenge is to find a one-fix, enduring approach that will cut down on that temporary repair that needs a second visit. And at this time of year, that is the real challenge, because what you're seeing is saturated roads, potholes full of water. We need to make them safe, and to do that quickly, the response is to do a temporary repair at this point in time and then go back when you're over that peak and do a more enduring repair. If we can do that in one trip, that'll be good for everybody.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome this report coming to the committee. Thank you for that. I think 3 areas to focus on really is that backlog reduction, the inspections regime, which has always been a key issue for members of this county council, and also then that repair quality, which is mentioned by a colleague over there. I think obviously I've talked when we had this an item to do with highways at last scrutiny, obviously about the backlog relating to the 3,000 less potholes that repaired during the autumn period last year, and also the pause obviously that took place, and its knock-on effect and the risks that were put forward by officers at the time, which I think are coming true. But I think you mentioned the weather, and of course when winters like this are not unusual. I think we're in like the 3rd, 4th, 5th probably in a row where we've had really wet and spells, and we're in there at the moment, and the roads are being hammered by that, aren't they? I think we all accept that. That's not your fault. It's obviously the weather we have now. And I think we're starting really from a bad position because of the less potholes repaired in the summer. I think when we're looking at quality of repairs, it's better to repair a pothole and use the summer months and the autumn months to do that instead of building a backlog hub when you're going to have obviously bad weather. The materials that are used, I believe, have to be different in colder weather than in summer weather, and that probably isn't as resilient, so that means the repairs fail. So I think we've got to where we are because of decisions made by yourself as portfolio holder. But when it comes to the inspections, I know that the previous administration brought inspections back in-house. So that inspection regime is, we rely on the public, don't we, to report, and we've got the reported function, which a lot of people use, etc. But there's nothing better than having inspectors out there picking up the problems and dealing with those by getting them on the system so they can be repaired. So it's just the changes you're making to the inspection regime. Could you give us a bit more about that? I'm not going to press the issue on repair quality because that's been pressed before, but on that backlog, I would say again that we have got into a situation where we've hit the bad weather. And my question, which wasn't answered at the last meeting, I think he went away to discuss it, was how is that going to affect the future programme for highways and actually getting this year's structural maintenance programme and all the others? We know there are delays in repairs. Newcastle at the moment seems to be, every other road seems to have a red light on it and temporary traffic lights and roads being dug up, etc., all during the period when it's not the best time to do it, when they could have been done earlier in the year, particular one scheme I mentioned last time. So it'd be good to have an update how we can get out of this and keep Staffordshire moving and get some of these repairs done to reduce this backlog, because I think it's been exasperated by the lack of work over the autumn. And I think just one last thing before the portfolio comes back is the accusation last time is that this was carrying on the programme of the previous administration. I was sitting around the cabinet table for the last 2 years particularly. There was a recovery programme in place to deal with this type of weather and investment up front. If that had been continued and that approach had been continued, I think we'd be in a better position than we are now. Thank you.
Right. I'll answer the first part of that, and again, I'll come back and then say, as far as I'm concerned, it's a total mischaracterisation of what took place. What took place was what was necessary. We had parts of our county absolutely gridlocked and unfunctional due to the volume of works that had been put into the system and allowed to run for many, many years, and overrun for many, many years. I'm thinking of Stafford, I'm thinking of the Taylor Wimpey developments that were clashing with other works. They are the areas where we said, do not put any money work into those areas. There was no blanket reduction of work. You say that measured against the previous years. Well, the previous year had a very severe winter, and in fact, extra monies were made available to add extra crews. The budget we inherited did not have that extra money in it and did not have those extra crews in it. What we delivered was what was planned for when we came in and took over the agreed budgets. And if you look at that, taking out the previous year where 3,000 more supposedly potholes got fixed, we don't know whether it was 3,000 different potholes, but 3,000 extra numbers got fixed, then what we delivered this year was within 1% of the average over the last 5 years. It's bang on the mark in comparison to every other year in the last 5 years on average. And that says that actually we got the decision right. Because what we did, for instance, was we didn't allow Sandon Road to be closed in September fully, while Taylor Wimpey has still got the roads closed for doing their roadworks, and while we still got the A34 closed for the levelling up funding and changes there. We went and that had been granted, we withdrew it, and we went and said, you need to do something different. We can facilitate you near Christmas, we can have one-way working, we can have traffic lights, but we can do something in the new year for you to play catch-up with your works programme. And that meant that Stafford didn't suffer another major road closure when there was already 2 in the system. That's all that was about. It was never stopping work. It never stopped pothole fixes. It never withdrew. There was a couple of schemes we stopped. For instance, there was one where we were due to go and do some surface dressing, where we know this year the utilities are due to go and dig the road up and put new sewage pipes in. That didn't make sense to spend the money last year on fixing a road that's about to be dug up. And it's that kind of coordination that this roadmap seeks to embed and seeks to develop so that we actually spend the money wisely and once, and having spent it, we don't suddenly find somebody else coming along and wrecking it. Emergencies exempted from that because we can't do much about them. So that's the reality of what that action was. It was the right thing to do. Stafford and other areas were struggling to function. People couldn't go about their lives, businesses couldn't get customers, and if we'd have carried on just letting the work flow as it did, then we would have been in a real serious situation as far as the local economy and the functioning network was concerned. And they're the only areas that we addressed. We have embedded that in the new management plan for the network and for accessing the network, because we do want to keep Staffordshire moving. And that does bring a challenge, because it does mean if all your priorities are in one area, you're going to have to make some decisions. You're going to have to slide work, you're going to have to move work to an area that's less congested. But overall, for Staffordshire as a network, the risk profile remains the same. If you fix Road B instead of Road A, Road A's risk goes up, Road B's risk comes down. Overall, it is managing the asset in the best possible way while trying to keep it functional for the people that need it and for the economy that needs it. So that was that. The second part of the question was about... Sorry, I've forgotten. After that. Inspections. Do you want to answer that?
I'll say a bit about inspections. So there's a few elements with inspections. Obviously, in sort of highway management terms, inspections aren't just in a silo by themselves. They're part of a bigger condition information and data information about how we manage the network. So in terms of picking up on some of those points there, I'd say one of the first changes we've made have been more linked to the asset management side on a more strategic planning basis in terms of condition data. So we now use AI capability to carry out regular condition data surveys as part of our planned inspection route. So AI within the vehicles actually collects, rather than have sort of annual surveys or surveys that collect data every 2, 3 or 4 years, it's now collecting AI condition data every time the inspected vehicle drives down a route, and it's capturing that information. So that's temporary and up to date. That's really, really helpful stuff. In terms of that AI capability as well, coming back to research and development, there's a lot of stuff going on across the rest of the country as well. We're plugged into a lot of research and development networks. So Surrey Council, for example, are trying to pilot and develop some AI capability for the day-to-day safety inspection. So not so much condition data in terms of overall deterioration, but actually picking up defects and then taking that defect, using various parameters and data to risk assess that defect in terms of its severity, where it is located in the position of the carriageway or footway or whatever, to assign its category risk, and then be able to automatically schedule that for repair as well. So using AI right the way through there, from identifying the defect to scheduling and organising the repair. So there's some interesting R&D work going on there. So we're watching that very, very closely and looking to see at what point maybe we'll be able to adopt some of that technology and capability. And then I think all of that links in as well with you've got the £50 million extra investment programme on the backlog. So we'll be thinking about how our planned inspections now work with that, so that when we're looking at, we know we've got 32,000 defects, of which about 17,000 potholes. Some of those defects and that data is quite old in terms of when it was inspected. It might have been part of an annual inspection, or it might have been reported by a member of the public many, many months ago. But coordinating our inspections so that we're collating information in a contemporary way before we schedule sort of pre-site survey, if you like, prior to works being completed. So we're using the right data to make sure that we're planning the right repair technique to ensure a durable, robust repair, and as part of that investment programme to get that work stat down. So there's just a few different elements there in terms of how the inspection activity is kind of evolving and improving through AI and through more scheduled, cleverer ways of taking that work forward. Was that? Yeah, okay.
Yes, thanks for that, Jane. Great use of technology, and we should use that to help us to get that data so that we can be repaired. My question is, and it's something we discussed, Chair, didn't we? I think before Christmas. It's the marking up of these potholes or defects. We had across the centre of Newcastle, my division, your division, Chair, and some of the others, suddenly loads of circles and squares were put around, white paint. And unfortunately, most of those have worn off now without any repairs. I think we had a conversation, didn't we, Chair, about, are we going to have a massive, big repair programme for Newcastle? I thought, well, that's going to be difficult, isn't it, given the funding requirements. But it got people's hopes up that work was going to be done. Residents were saying, oh, yes, that's going to be done as a defect. Even minor dips in roads were marked out. And I think there needs to be something which we have to manage expectation on this. And I think that's not really good policy, because a lot of people are saying now, oh, my road is marked out and the lines have disappeared now because of the bad weather. It'll still be on the system, of course, but was it really going to be repaired in any state of time that would have been relevant to that marking? So I just think we need to have a look at that, because I've raised this previously with James and the team when I was a cabinet member around this council, and I think it's something which we have to really be aware of if we're going to get people's expectations of we have to deliver. And I think putting white lines around potential defects and then not repairing them and then the white line disappearing just completely destroys the confidence people will have. Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to come in on that as well, because yeah, Councillor Tagger's right, we have had discussions about it, and but kind of built my, exactly as Councillor Tagg has described, built my hopes up that, oh, wow, we're going to do a lot of work here. Now, work has begun on bits of it, and I may as well bring it up now. I'm a bit concerned about the repairs that are being made are substandard, I'm afraid. Many residents have showed me pictures of them. They're not being sealed, but I've kept on assuring my residents that it's because we're going to come back and top dress the entire road, and because this is part of the whole road approach. That top dressing hasn't come yet, and I'm starting to wonder whether these repairs we've already made won't even make it to the time where we do the top dressing. But yeah, I'll open it up to you guys.
Yeah, there are a number of reasons why we mark it up, and all that feedback is really, really helpful about why we mark stuff up. Obviously, I think there's a few different elements to it. Sometimes the defects are marked up because they're quite severe defects, and then they do require an urgent response. It could be an emergency, a Cat 1 or Cat 2 that's going to get responded within 7 days. And actually in the short term, if you're able to mark it up, it can actually be quite helpful to just highlight the presence of the defect so that nobody, you know, injures themselves or damages the vehicle, and it can be quite helpful. However, it's also not consistent. If the road surface is wet, then you can't actually mark it up most of the time, so we are automatically inconsistent in that respect. I think a lot of the more significant markings up that you've seen has probably been part of pre-surface dressing patching works, where it's been marked out as significant pieces of work. It's got to be measured and planned out. So they do get marked for that reason. But then again, if those resources get pulled away because we've got such a big work stack, we've got the effects of weather, and then those planned programs of work get distracted by resources being pulled away to do with emergency responses, then you might lose that window of opportunity, can't get back on the network, the weather washes the defects away, and it causes the confusion, confusion and the irritation and the anxiety that people refer to it. So it is well understood. Not quite sure exactly what the solution to all that is, other than the overall roadmap about trying to get on top of that, get that work stack down so we have less instances of being reactive and called away from those planned works, but being able to really plan them, mark them out, communicate them, and then stick to that programme as best we can, other than where, of course, occasionally the weather is going to affect progress.
Yes, thank you for that, and I appreciate you are up against it and you are trying your best, but I just thought what Councillor Tagg said was valid and very personal to me as well. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, can the officers confirm how the governance and risk management arrangements within the roadmap ensure that the council meets its statutory duty under the Highways Act to maintain the network in a safe condition? I do have a follow-up question as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to say that our statutory duty is always going to be our #1 priority. And our officers are always focused on that, and we have a maintenance management team to ensure delivery against their own KPIs and that statutory duty. The roadmap governance is to ensure the overall programme delivery and making sure that we're working with our directorate in each department that has its own KPIs as their BAU function, and the additional roadmap priorities that we've got in terms of an enhanced programme of works. So I think there's a mix of governance against the own KPIs for that maintenance management, which they have at Staffordshire Highways Operations Board. There's many governance meetings that sit before that meeting, essentially, to make sure that they are meeting those statutory duties. But the roadmap governance is almost that umbrella piece over all of the works. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for that. My question is, to give the committee full assurance, can you confirm what specific controls, audit checks or escalation triggers are in place to demonstrate and evidence that we are discharging our Section 41 duty consistently across all our divisions in Staffordshire, please? Thank you.
Yes, of course. So I think it's probably worthwhile just explaining, just for clarity, the Section 41 duty is within the Highways Act, and that's about maintaining the fabric of the network to ensure that it's safe and fit for purpose. So we do that on a number of different ways. Probably our primary way of doing that is to carry out our safety inspections, which are in accordance with a hierarchy of the network in terms of its usage and its risk rating. So we have a programme of planned safety inspections. So they go about, in a routine programme of activity to capture those defects. Likewise, in addition to the safety inspections, things can happen in between safety inspections. So we also have a regime, of course, where people can report defects to us. So members of the public, local members, etc., can also report defects. So we capture those. So we've got all the defects, and each one of those defects gets risk assessed, prioritised, and then captured in our system. And prioritisation is done on a risk basis to comply with that statutory duty. So that's why we have those different tiers of emergency, category 1, category 2 and category 3, and we have different performance or response timescales to each of those. And actually our performance on the higher risk defects, so the emergencies, category 1s, category 2s, everything that we say should be repaired within 7 days is really, really high. And in terms of a bit of visibility around that, that's also captured in the corporate performance management systems. It's reported to Cabinet, it's reported to Scrutiny. So we have good visibility around that. The lower risk defects, so what we call the category 3 defects, that's where we've got the backlog. And yes, they can be a failure of statutory duty in theory, if you go beyond the response timescales for those, many of which could be. But they tend to be the lower risk ones, the ones that aren't likely or as likely to cause injury. They might cause some damage. Potentially, but we want to get on top of that, and that's the visibility part of the roadmap and the investment programme in terms of repairing those defects to get rid of that liability and bring us up to achievability. It does then sometimes potentially, it's how you manage that risk. You can then get into, particularly at this time of year it's important, but use temporary repairs in order to do that. But we also know that's inefficient and ineffective and not really well received public perception wise, because it is basically abortive work. You know you're going out there knowingly to do a temporary repair to keep it safe, to fulfil the statutory duty, but at the same time you'd rather spend more time planning the work, do a more durable, bigger repair that's going to last. That would be a more efficient, effective use of resources, but unfortunately the law sometimes is a bit in conflict with us there about doing the right thing in the right way. We just have to fulfil that statutory duty sometimes and keep it safe.
Councillor Bentley.
Much, Chair. Thanks for the report and thank you. I'm looking forward to the new work programme. A couple of things I've pushed for in the past is I see that we don't seem to have the machinery as I would have thought we'd have on some of these depots. So I've seen some repairs going on and they do seem to be done in an very old-fashioned way, i.e. shovels and brushes and 5 men shoveling onto the back of a pickup truck. You know, with the modern technology we've got with small diggers and how you can hire them and having JCB in our midst. So one of the questions, as it was picked up over there, is these teams, what tools and what equipment will we be supplying with them? Because my area, when I do ask for something to be done, there always seems to be an issue with what they can do with because the machine's somewhere else. So, you know, I don't think we've got that many diggers, so it's over there, so it can't be over here. So if we are going down the local route of having teams in the local, what equipment are we going to supply them? So, you know, I've got a little digger and I can do more in 10 minutes of the digger than I can in 2 days on the shovel. So that's one thought. And then the other one is I'd like to push for localism, run through the local areas, whether we can do a advertisement to encourage people, businesses, sorry, to contact the council and see if they can help us. You know, and what I'm thinking is out loud is you've got your inspectors and you've got your educated people, if you like. We don't seem to have many people who can do the actual stuff on the ground. Is that something we can bring the contractors in and they'd work under the umbrella of the AME or the council workforce to get rid of some of this backlog. You know, like you say, the potholes, like Mr. Bailey said, you know, the potholes, it is heartbreaking when you see they only do one and left one, but if we had a local couple of contractors come in for a couple of months to give us a bit of a push, would that be something? And then finally, you can answer these in any order. I come through Derby the other day and they were repairing some potholes. Well, they were buying a strip down the side of the road. And there was a guy with a pickup truck with an hot box and two guys putting the hot tar into the gully, if you like, where the cars had pushed the grass verge away. And they were putting it in red hot and they were whacker plating it down. And I should go past this road regular because it's where we go dog training. So I should keep my eye on that. But I did stop and take some photographs and I asked them how it worked. And they hired the hot boxes. And the hot boxes follows the workforce around. So it's a contract with an hot box. And I thought, not a bad way of doing things. And then today, before I come here, we got a road closure where I live. And I went up to see what was going on and everything was going on in Kadori. And they were doing the exact same repair, but they wasn't even putting tarmac in it. They was putting road planings in it. And I just thought, by this afternoon, the water was running through the road planings as it was doing it. And I just saw, you know, within a week, I seen two repairs doing the same thing. One was in Derby and one was in Staffordshire. So I was just, going back, can we use local workforces? You know, I know they've got to have a bit of training, but I've got yards full of people with hot boxes and everything driving over our potholes. So that's one. And if we aren't doing that way, what equipment are we going to put in these depots so they can do some of the jobs that we're asking them to do? Thank you.
I'll answer. There's a number of things in there. To answer a quick one first, you talked about repairing a pothole and leaving another pothole. Part of the whole roads approach is to get away from that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's to repair between A and B,
yeah,
and to pick up all the asset types and see what we can combine, how we can pull funding and programmes together so we make one visit and do more.
Look forward to that.
In terms of equipment, it's not our equipment, it's through our I+ contractor and their subcontractors, and they plan and execute the works to the best way they think that delivers for the money and resources available. We'd all like brand new, lots of equipment, lots of machines out there, but actually, ask yourself, what is the cost of that compared to the cost of doing it in a more traditional way? It may seem that it's an old-fashioned way and a machine will make it a lot quicker, but if you spend your 250k on a machine in order to make it quicker, you've got to do a lot more of them to get the same pounds in the ground. So they are things that we have to work with the officers and with our suppliers. They have to work through and understand. And it's about resources, it's about suitability, it's about being able to get people out there when we need them. And sometimes lower technology solutions do the trick and they work and they repair the road and it's fixed. In terms of local suppliers, well obviously our I+ contractor uses a range of their own subcontractors, predominantly within a local radius. The roadmap does seek downstream to go to a mixed delivery model, and by that I mean some of that may well be commissioned directly by ourselves and delivered, not just through the I+ contract. But at this stage, the roadmap's about us taking more planning and decision control at this front end and making it more locally focused and still delivering through the mechanisms we have in place. And there's good reason for that, why we are changing what we do, why we are trying to develop a more asset-driven management approach to the overall assets. It would be a stretch too far to also be running through procurement processes, assessment processes, getting people out there who then need perhaps additional supervision in the early days because they've not worked on our assets before. To put all that together in one charge, if you like, of a change would be highly risky. So we're taking it on a staged approach, and that is to get the mechanisms in place first to control that management, that decision, that local focus, and then downstream to start to move to a more mixed delivery model in those areas where we see advantages. No point doing it just for the sake of it. You do it where it brings benefits to the outcomes. And this whole roadmap is outcome driven. It's about having better outcomes. And the roadmap is flexible enough to adapt where we think we're not seeing the outcomes we're expecting. we will tweak it so we get the outcomes that we were seeking. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I do agree with that. I was thinking, like I say, back to the Derbyshire and the hotbox idea. You know, if we are going to do an old stretch of road, the system I seem to see it that we're working to. They go to the depot, pick some tarmac up, put it on the back of the truck, and bring it out, and like you say, just do the potholes they need to do. But if we're going to do a stretch of road, we probably will need a mobile hotboxes of some description, and you know, to finish that set of road, you know. I do this sort of thing, and I watch it, and I do see how they work, and I'm just thinking that probably will be something. And then the other one is, we all do it in as private lives, don't we? We don't have everything. We hire things in if we need it for that certain time, and then when we don't need it, we send it back. So we haven't got to buy all these new machines, but there's probably machines out there sitting in local yards that we could use, then send back when we don't need them. That's what I was trying to get to. But thank you for your update.
And that is part of working out how the if you like, the new wrap-round whole roads delivery model works. If you're going out to do 3 or 4 potholes, you take less time like if you're going out to do 10 potholes. And therefore the facilities, the machines, the hot boxes, as you say, those requirements change. And that's part of us getting control of that planning. And when we get hold of the planning and start to bring the asset types together, that's when we can actually see where those efficiencies come from and where those machines might had benefit over just going and fixing 2 or 3 potholes in a more manual way. What I would like to say though is we talk a lot about potholes and fixing potholes. They are a symptom. That's all. They're a symptom of a highways network that's been underfunded for decades, and that is not anybody's fault of any administrations that have gone before or sit here now. We have all suffered because of central government decisions around that, and we've done the best we can with what's available. So I'm not seeking to score points in that respect, but they're a symptom. What the roadmap's seeking to do is trying to break, if you like, the boom and bust cycle of pothole repairing on an annual basis. We're seeing it now in the winter, potholes are breaking out. A lot of those are Cat 3s that are now Cat 2s and Cat 1s, because they're your vulnerability points. If you can break the cycle and fix some of them through a backlog targeted programme, in years to come, you seek to reduce the damage and the effects that you see through a period like this winter. I'm not saying they'll all disappear. I'm not saying the highways network will be totally resilient. It's still life expired in places, but it's trying to break that boom and bust cycle and trying to cut down on the symptoms that come from having a almost life expired asset.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Just like you said, it is a bad investment in the previous whatever, but the one of them is maintenance as well, isn't it? You know, I know we're cleaning the gullies out a little bit more, but that'd probably be a good investment in the local depots, a gully sucker, so all the gullies, I mean, one of the roads, it was Councillor Beamel's road actually, this was this week, the gully sucker come up, and for whatever reason, left 3 of the gullies like 50 yards behind where they started, and obviously that's where it was running down the road. So the localism hopefully will address all this. That's what I'm looking forward to, you know. But them gully suckers aren't a fortune to buy, are they? So we literally could hire some of them into the depots. That'd be good. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, what I would like to ask is the schedule of being updated in 4 months. Would that be able to be done as a briefing paper, or are you expecting to come to committee again in 4 months?
I'm quite happy for it to be done as a briefing paper. We're having our bi-monthly boards, we're having the monthly operation boards, so it will flow straight out of that. So we could do a briefing paper, no problem, yeah.
Is the rest of the committee happy with that? Okay, that is the recommendation. We are now moving on to item number 7, which, as has already been said, is very, very related. This is the UK road adaptation best practice. Again, to you, Councillor Mason. Councillor.
Forgot about the mic. This outlines how we're preparing Staffordshire Highway network to remain safe, reliable and resilient. It naturally flows on from the previous discussion we've just had. What we're looking is to strengthen the overall ability to withstand disruption, continue operating effectively, and aimed at managing the increasingly impactful weather. So, you know, the level of rain we're seeing now run onto our roads is greater than it was a number of years ago, for many reasons. And some of those reasons we need to adapt to. It underpins, as you know, the highway network is essential to everybody. Work, school, business, connected communities. And we can see the disruption it's caused when it's not available to people. So this report really is about looking at how we embed those adaptation issues, how we find ways of dealing with the effects that we're experiencing, and how we make the highways network far more resilient to these events. And Matthew, have you got a presentation? So I'll ask Matthew to run that through with yourselves, if that's okay.
Can I just build on that and just say, I suppose that, in summary, and to build on what Councillor Mason said there, the purpose of this paper is not to present conclusions as such today. You know, this is about our sort of preparedness assessment is still progressing, but it is really about just highlighting to committee today, sort of acknowledge, I suppose, the weather patterns are changing. So we've heard about that already quite a few times today, so it's quite timely in terms of lining up with the agenda to highlight those issues, and that presents a big challenge on our network, which we've all seen and we can see today, even making a journey to here, provide some assurance that as a service area, we are obviously very cognizant of that, and we're engaged nationally and regionally in shaping national best practice about how to adapt to these changes. We can't just carry on doing what we're doing and chasing ourselves when the weather is getting worse and more challenging. And really to just kind of outline the progress that's been made to improve the resilience of our network so far, and seek some views from the committee. So we've already got a strong risk-based asset management framework in place, but it does require further work to develop a kind of whole system solution to the challenges we're going to be facing. So your reflections today in terms of where we're at, where we're going, will be really helpful to that. So I'll just hand over to Matt to get into a bit more of it. Do you want to drive the slides, or do you want me to do it? I'll try, yeah.
There we go. So, yeah, I rarely pass up the opportunity to try and convey the scale and complexity of the highway network, and I won't fail to do that today either. So, our network, Staffordshire's 6,000 kilometres, there or thereabouts. In terms of network size, that's around the 15th at the last count, in terms of the largest networks in the country, of around 150 plus highway authorities. Comprises of a broad range of diverse highway assets that all have a number of interdependencies. I think we've touched on some of those today, so everyone coming into the office today will have sort of focused on road condition and maybe potentially a bit of drainage, footway condition, but there's a whole gamut of assets that sit alongside there that are not visible. So we've got tunnels, culverts, safety barriers, potentially some of our green infrastructure in terms of verges, trees. I could go on, an awful lot of drainage, awful lot of assets there with, as I say, we've got large interdependencies. And a lot of challenges around each of those asset groups as well. So we've talked about today some of the age and infrastructure of our network, 200-year plus bridges and things like that. We've got a legacy of funding pressures, again, which we've touched on today, and rising public expectation and an awareness from the public around the services we do and don't deliver and how we deliver them. And layered on top of those challenges are the issues around impactful weather, which sort of the last 6 or 8 weeks have certainly sort of borne that out. And they've added pressures to the network. They've accelerated damage and deterioration in locations and caused network disruption in terms of surface water flooding and the likes. And that impacts effectively are borne out through saturated road layers. So no surprise with the wet weather we've had, preceded by the snow and ice we had in the new year. The road layers get saturated, it causes sort of generation of deterioration under the subsurface, makes potholes appear quite rapidly at times on some parts of our network. These are not sort of potholes that are sort of arrive or sort of
overnight. They're sort of sometimes over periods of months. They're overnight on occasions. We have the drainage overload, so we have an awful lot of drainage assets on the network. What we do have is also a dependency on third parties for the drainage. So a lot of our drainage assets sort of outfall into third-party drainage in terms of water mains. And obviously much of our drainage outfalls then into water courses in terms of streams, rivers, brooks, which anyone who's walked across from sort of riverside development today will see how high the river is there and the capacity that's sort of limited in those sort of areas as well. And what we're seeing this year, unsurprisingly, is a large spike in inquiries, a large spike in defects, and which will no doubt precede a large spike in claims as well. And we're seeing there, we've had preceding years of 2024 and 25 where we've reached record levels of inquiries and defects. And at the moment we're sort of running just ahead of those. So January this year was around 30% more than January last year in terms of bituminous reinstatement jobs that are raised, which are effectively repairs to potholes. And we're around 15% higher demand in January this year compared to January last year in terms of a demand for jetting, in terms of drainage capacity. We're also looking at the type of defects that we experienced this year, and we've touched on through the roadmap as well. There's an awful lot of emergency and category 1 defects at the moment, which sort of generate their own demand and that's sort of their own inefficiency in trying to keep on top of those. And it also makes, we've touched on inspections as well, also makes safety inspections very challenging because we're trying to inspect roads where they're primarily sort of underwater in some locations. And so it's very much a sort of area where we have very obvious impacts of the winter weather, but what we wanted to bring into this as well is that there's a summer and there's a seasonal impact as well. So you'll see on the slide there around asphalt softening. So occasionally you might see gritters out on the network during the summer, and it's not because we're sort of looking at sort of dealing with frost. It's because we have asphalt softening, bitumen's melting, and we're outpouring in sort of ground rock dust onto the network to sort of stabilise that. We have bridge vulnerabilities. That's sort of seasonal, so the expansion and contraction of different aspects of the structures. This time of year, the rivers are high and they're running quite quickly, so we have issues with scour on piers, for example. And I think then there's the other things we want to bear out here that are less obvious, really. So we've got in there this extended season of vegetation growth. So what we're seeing is milder, wetter weather, which has given us extended growth periods for green infrastructure, predominantly our grass verges, which then impact things like desire sight lines and things like that. So it's very much a sort of whole asset sort of impact that we're experiencing through the weather. And adaptation is about understanding how these weather patterns are going to impact us now and in the future as well. So it allows us to identify suitable mitigations, balance the act of not acting now and acting in the future, and understanding what that cost looks like. And in this context, adaptation means sort of modifying our planning, design, maintenance and operational processes, and it's trying to get the network then in the most safe, resilient and functional position that we can. So you'll start to see a thread through this particular piece of work and the environmental action plan and obviously the roadmap as well. There is a lot of national guidance around adaptation. There's a number of acronyms there. I'm not going to go through them, but they're all related to national bodies. And they are centred really on asset-based, risk-based asset management. As James alludes to, we've got a really robust framework around there, and embedding resilience into long-term planning. And that's what the area that we're looking to go into now is looking into the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and understanding what that demand and impact is going to look like. So as James alludes to, Staffordshire Highways incorporates resilience-focused measures through its risk-based asset management processes, which are set out within our Highway Infrastructure Asset Management Plan. So the Highway Infrastructure Asset Management Plan on the authority's website has a series of volumes at the back. Each of them represent a different asset group, and it starts to set out the demand and how we manage and maintain those particular assets. And when we sort of looking into those individual assets, we're talking about durable materials. So it's not just the asphalt we put on the network, it's the street lighting column construction that we choose, it's the drainage measures that we put in. And we already put practices in place to sort of future-proof us around drainage management. So if we're doing drainage schemes, for example, we look at what the flow or capacity of that particular drainage asset is required for 50, 75, 100 years' time, not just now. And we try and build this all around data. And I think more crucially, work is underway at the moment to look at that future landscape around a new impact and preparedness assessment, and that's due to be completed around May 2026. That particular project is where we've took all the data and information that we have around all those different asset groups, so all the history of inquiries, jobs, condition data, risk flooding maps, everything we can think of, programmes of work, cyclical and sort of planned, and put them into a model that's been used by National Highways and one or two other authorities to start to understand where our vulnerabilities are on the network. And this piece of work's been done before, but at a regional level, so it gives us very much a strategic level view. What we're trying to do now is get down to the muck and bullets, really, where on Staffordshire's network, a granular 2-kilometre basis with individual assets mapped, are going to present our vulnerabilities and our future risks. And that report will then start to bear out what adaptation measures we need to future-proof ourselves, and more importantly, what the cost of those adaptation measures will be, and actually what the cost of not putting those measures in place will be as well. So it starts to build up a picture and a potential business case that we can sort of, again, link into the roadmap, lobby central government, etc., to try and get more funding in particular areas, and structures being a key one through the roadmap that is sort of understood to be a pressure on a day-to-day. So when I talk about structures, I mean embankments, retaining walls, all manner of, not just bridges in their true form. And you'll see from the presentations today, there's a clear sort of strategic alignment here through the Environmental Action Plan and the roadmap, and we have worked very closely with James's team in developing some of these areas, particularly the impact and preparedness assessment. Indeed, their input's been quite key, really, and there has been those reciprocal arrangements where some of the funding has been borne from those service areas as well, which has been really good. I mean, hopefully you sort of recognise those interdependencies as well, and we'll start to bear those out in future. And what this really is about, looking into the future and sort of future-proofing our services, future-proofing our network, and moving away from how we recover from inclement weather events to how we prepare and plan for them in a more proactive way. I keep thinking when I change this, you can see on the screen, but there you go. So yeah, the two recommendations that have been put forward to committee today is just to consider the report in the context of Staffordshire County Council's wider responsibilities. So we've touched on statutory duties and how we ensure the network resilience against those and the efficiencies. And also the role of adaptation in making the impactful weather events in Staffordshire less impactful, and how it shapes our future asset management, how we identify our investment priorities, and then ultimately how we develop our service delivery and our recovery plans based on that, appreciating that recommendation 2 has a lot of reliance on the impact and assessment report being brought to life, and having time to digest that and see what that exactly means on the network, because it's a sort of a brand new piece of work that is going to give us a greater understanding of what Staffordshire looks like, its different domains, its different pressures. So it's going to be a really positive piece of work. And that was all, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, and I must say thank you for your patience. You've been sitting at the back of the room since the beginning to give your presentation right at the end. Do we have any questions? We have Councillor Jones.
Yeah, it's just the one question. Thank you. Can you clarify for us what specific monitoring or audit process will allow this committee to see whether the agreed adaptation measures are actually reducing weather-related safety risks for residents over time? Thank you.
Yes, I think what we'll be looking at is the outputs from the impact assessment that we're carrying out now. We'll have time to digest that, look what those impact measures are like, and what we'll be sort of informing or sort of using the governance structure that's around the roadmap. So it's intended that the briefings will come at the same sort of pace as the roadmap initially, to set those outcomes and sort of put that scrutiny around it.
Can I just supplement that? This is part of making the roadmap work. There's no good having a roadmap that doesn't recognise the realities of what you're going to experience. And therefore, the two are linked. And adaptation is actually mentioned in the roadmap. It is something we've just got to take cognizance of and get right. And we've got to manage for the realities. So it will come through a similar process, and in fact it'll probably be joined up effectively in terms of how those outcomes are demonstrated.
Councillor Bentley.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the presentation. Just, it might be bits, two things really. One is, to get the extra money, we need to prove that we're making gains into it, don't we? So, one of my concerns is, do we monitor our repairs when we've done them? So once it's signed off, do we know, is it in the database that we can look back and say, oh, this job was only done 6 months ago, or 12 months ago, or 18 months ago? Because that's, to me, that's how we'll learn, won't we? Going forward, we'll do a repair, whether it's the new way or the old way, or whichever way we do it. But how will we monitor it if we... So that's what I'm trying to say, do these contractors come on our road, do they guarantee their work for 2 years or 3 years? Because, like you say, it's all right having extra money, but we've got to be a bit careful how we spend the money, haven't we? So I wonder if that's something you can answer.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a slightly different question than adaptation. So, but it is about durability to be more resilient, I guess, in part of the network. So, yes, we do have. Well, there's a number of things we through our the simplest way is we have our own compliance officers who do sample audits of work in the same way that our network inspectors do sample audits of utility works. Don't inspect everything, but we do that. But then the contractors themselves also have their quality management systems to say, have we done the right treatment in the right... So we go back, actually. We specify the right solution in the first place, check compliance with specifications in terms of visual inspections and compliance. We might take samples as well, test materials for the right choice of material, the right compaction, etc., etc. So there's a whole range of a sort of quality management system that ensures that compliance. Where there are failures, abortive failures, it depends on the circumstances. So we've just talked about, we do a lot of temporary repairs, they are temporary, so the county council retains responsibility for that. But if a piece of work is done that is doesn't meet specification or fails prematurely, then yeah, that work is defective, and that work has to be put right at the contractor's own expense as a disallowed cost. So they're back to that to put that right. That doesn't prevent people being disrupted though by the inconvenience of it all again when you've got to do something again.
You've got a follow-up, have you, Gary?
Yeah, thanks for that. It just, yeah, I am just concerned that you do see after a couple of years or less than 2 years a problem, and I just wondered, if we are really on top of that, and if we're not, is that something we can look forward going forward, really? But thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I recommend that this committee is A, consider the report in context of Staffordshire County Council's wider responsibilities for ensuring a resilient and effective highway network, that B, scrutinise the role of adaptation as a result of impactful weather events shaping future asset management investments and priorities and service delivery. I would like to ask if it would be possible, as in the same, we're having a briefing note on the previous item, if we could have a briefing note as an update of how you are progressing with this for 4 months' time. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine. If it would suit, we can combine that into the one briefing note, because adaptation and innovation is already part of the roadmap anyway, so we can specifically ensure that that's included in that briefing note, if that works for yourselves.
That does indeed. Thank you, Councillor Mason.
No
Is
problem.
that agreed with the committee? Yes. Right. Thank you. We close that item then, and we move now on to item 8, the work programme. Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a brief one in terms of Councillor Jones' recommendation from committee at the last meeting is reflected in there, and that subsequent updates will be reflected in future work programme items in the agenda. In the appendices, I've also included a revised version of the flood risk management information session notes, as well as the notes of the site visit to the Staffordshire History Centre.
Thank you for that, Jacob, which moves us on to item 9, the date of the next meeting. The date and time of the next meeting will be Thursday, the 26th of March 2026 at 10 o'clock in County Buildings. And other than that, there are no items for exclusion, so I call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, officers.